Hello, hello. Let's see here. Waiting for my delay to come in, and then I've got to pause it so that I won't have the and paused. Mostly did it. Okay. How are things going? We are here. Um, Recently I've been like trying to do, starter topics. Um, and so I've been going back to Jaqen a little bit, and it's it's strange because like I think there was a time right after reading when I first got into like ice and fire theory making. I'd read Brand Voss's essays, which is the thing that really got me into the theory crafting. And after reading Brand Voss, you just kind of have this idea that George has planned everything out because he brings up all of these things that kind of that you didn't think of that where I'd say a lot of them George does think about, but you're convinced that like everything like that George has everything planned out, and all of these little bits and pieces and loose ends are going to tie together in a nice little package. And certainly over the years, I kind of there's a lot more you find where George does think about that, but then there's ones where stuff you didn't even think of, like when Sam finds out that Stannis burned Alistair Florent. you know when he hears that story, they purposely don't mention the man's name because that's actually Sam's grandfather. And like it's just little things like that where you're like, oh, George was thinking about that. And then there's other stuff where I'm just like, does George even know? Like did he create a mystery box with no, in the sort of J.J. Abrams style, and he doesn't really know. And so Jaqen is one of those mystery boxes where I genuinely wonder if George even knows what he's doing with that character. And he didn't need to bring Jaqen back, but he has this situation where Jaqen is found in the dark cells or the black cells in King's Landing for some reason, which would imply that um by the way, it's really funny. I just saw sometimes I'm distracted by a very funny comment. But this one I was laughing at. Wait, Sam is a grandfather? I didn't know that. Um, Jock and his time traveling Arya confirmed. That's pretty funny and pretty interesting because I'm off track, but I've recently been thinking, and this is something that came up when writing the Samwell chapter, as we were putting the Samwell chapter together, whether Jaqen Hagar is actually a woman, because we have no idea. We have no idea what Jaqen Hagar's true face is. We have no idea who Jaqen was originally. Jaqen could be a woman. Um, so could Jaqen actually be a time traveling Arya? um, but the but one of the things, like, I did George really think out why Jaqen Hagar would be in the black cells, and did he really think out the Rorgan Biter thing? Because other times people were like, "Oh, what's Rorgan Biter's backstory?" And he just kind of says, "Oh, they were pit fighters," and you're like, "What? These two guys are hanging out with Jaqen Hagar, and you're just gonna say that they're pit fighters? Like, that doesn't really make any sense." Like, Biter has like weird rubbery skin that like Brienne punches her fist into, and it just kind of sinks, you know. Um, and so I don't know. So I had come up with this long theory that Jaqen, that it seemed like if Jaqen were in the black cells, he wanted to be taken to the wall, and so that maybe his mark was past the wall, but then he ends up in Old Town, where I kind of thought, well, if he's an assassin, it's most useful that he's looking for the glass candle. I think most people that are theory people like think that he's looking for a a book about how to kill everybody with dragons or something because it has to do with like the faceless men's like, grand plan of destroying the world or something. I think my theory was put in better light that he was looking for the glass candle by the previous drafts of A Feast for Crows that G. Steph researched, where it does reveal that Jaqen was looking for the glass candle. But um, and then it's like, well, who would he be looking for with the glass candle, and who would he be looking for north of the wall? And the only person I could come up with is Bloodraven, and that Jaqen was assigned to kill Bloodraven at some point. Um, do you think there's any chance at all that Daemon brought the 1-year-old twin girls to King's Landing to betroth them to Viserys' two sons? Hmm. Huh. That's an interesting idea. Um, I'm trying to think like when Aegon becomes married to or gets betrothed to Helena. Um, because then Daemon, at that point, Daemon would be thinking about he'd be aligning with the High Towers in order to usurp Rhaenyra and be on that side. Um, that would be a bold move, and it would be difficult to pull off because at that point, Laenor, Laenor is king consort. He's still alive, and so is Lena, and no one thinks they're going to die. And so, in order for them to switch things to Aegon, I mean, with the Valarians, would they be neutral on that switch because it would go to Lena's children? I don't know. Um, I would say no, only because knowing Daemon and his egg hatching and everything, um, Aegon may have hatched an egg by then. Aemond was unsuccessful, and had not claimed any dragons. So at the moment, at that time, Aemond looks like a big loser. And I'm trying to think like Aegon and Sunfire. We're not sure when he hatches Sunfire. Um, Probably by then because he starts riding Sunfire. Um, you know, well, I mean George is pretty inconsistent about the how fast like dragons get raised and grow to adult size, considering how young Drogon is, and other dragons like 9 years in are considered hatchlings. Um, he had been claimed by the prince by 120, so Sunfire is at least hatched probably by then. Uh, it's an interesting idea. It's not something I considered just thinking about Damon's personality. Like he jumps on the Valarian faction. Um, so I'm going to say that I'm going to say actually that no, Damon didn't think that, and it's only because Book Damon is very, very obedient to Viserys. He does whatever Viserys asks, um, and he honors Viserys's words. Like when Viserys says something, like when he goes and Viserys says, "Bring the egg back and send your wife to Lice," he does it. When he says um, and so I would say like Daemon is devoted to Viserys on the throne and Viserys's kingly wishes, like being honored for the most part. I think you can maybe find a case where he was ordered to go back to the Vale and then he didn't go back to the Vale or something. But other than that, he's a very dutiful character. He does exactly what Viserys wants. And what Viserys wanted, and it's very clear that Viserys wanted this, is he wanted Rhaenyra on the throne. Like that is very, very like undisputably clear. Like in all the retcons that George R. R. Martin did, he didn't change that. Like Viserys wanted Rhaenyra on the throne, and Daemon definitely honors what his brother says. Um, he's I mean, if anything, as much as the show confuses things, if anything, Daemon is very dutiful. He's very dutiful. He does exactly what Viserys says. He goes off and fights. He fights Viserys' war. He's treated like crap by Viserys. I'm kind of halfway through at least the first part of my Daemon the Hero video, and going through Daemon's actions, it's actually quite amazing how crappy Daemon is treated by Viserys, and how Daemon just kind of takes it all. I mean, when you think about things, like all previous Targaryens ruled the kingdom with their siblings in a sort of co-rule situation. It was more like family rule. Aegon the Conqueror family ruled with Viserys, with Visenya and Rhaenys, and then Aenys and Maegor family ruled together, siblings. And then Jaehaerys family ruled sibling with Alysanne. And so then it gets to Viserys, and Daemon is sitting there carrying Dark Sister, and nothing. They give him like Master of Law, Master of Coin, City Watch, but this was like a situation where like you're supposed to co-rule, and he that wasn't given to him. But he's dutiful, and he just deals with it. He's like, what, fine. So I'm gonna say no, because it was very clear that Rhaenyra was the heir, and Rhaenyra was supposed to rule. So, George wrote Jaqen specifically to fuck with the fandom. Probably. It's because there's nothing Jaqen says makes any sense compared to the House of Black and White once you get there. The whole like death must pay for life, and the three lives that he saves, and things like this, and all the extra murders that Jaqen does. It's just completely against everything that they kind of say at the House of Black and White. Have you ever read Lonely Song of Lauren Dor? It mentions Bacalon in the Seven. Yes. Bacalon appears quite a bit in a bunch of stories, but Lonely Song of Lauren Dor is a very, very pretty story by George. But yes, he mentions the evil group in it is called the Seven. It's kind of the first. I mean, even though it's not the faith of the Seven, it's still the Seven. Bacalon appears in a few places, but it's a great story. I'd put it in like the top 10 George R. R. Martin stories you should definitely read. Jaqen is Ashara Dane and Quaith. Yes. They could be House of Black and White agents, I guess. That would be my guess with Rorgenbiter. We're talking about Rorgenbiter here. At least, I don't know if it's by random accident, but Rorg is covered in black hair, and Biter is pale white like a maggot. And you have a black and white backdrop to Jaqen, like from the beginning. So at least like in that sense, I mean, maybe it was an accident, but in that sense, there is a black and white motif placed upon Rorg and Biter. And Biter does have kind of skin that's kind of like weird and mushy, and they're weirdly obedient and fearful of Jaqen, which we're not really sure why that is. And then once they join the Brave Companions, they just kind of blend in, and we think of them as Brave Companions. But it's weird to me, Rorg and Biter's relationship with Jaqen H'ghar. Like, they seem like they could be faceless men or faceless men's assistants. Arya definitely thinks that. Like, she definitely thinks that they are Jaqen's monsters. Like she, is how she describes them. Jaqen's the dusky woman. Maybe if Jaqen is a woman. Is Quentin alive in the fanfic? Yes, absolutely. Um, Faceless men want dragon egg because they can be used as nukes. Nuke can only be activated by powerful warg, which are Stark Arya. Use Arya to nuke as well. Crosses names off of a list, training a suicide bomber essentially. Well, that is one, assuming the Faceless Men really wanted a dragon egg. I understand the story and the theory that Euron. So Euron tells Victarion that he once held a dragon egg in his hand and then he tossed it into the sea. And then people say, well, there was also a Faceless Man, it seemed like, that killed Balon. And so some people are like, well, maybe he lied about dropping the dragon egg into the water and he gave it to the Bravosi in exchange for the assassin. Timeline doesn't work out at all. He wouldn't have had the time to go all the way up to Bravos and deal with these things. But also, like, it's weirdly taking a half lie. Like, oh, is Euron telling the truth or not? Well, I'm going to take the pieces of Euron's story that fit my theory and discard the pieces that don't fit my theory. Like, if you're going to say that Euron's a liar, then there's no truth to him having the dragon egg story. Okay. But if you're going to say that he like that he did, like, he dropped it in the ocean, then what's the point? But then you're saying, oh, he lied about dropping it in the ocean. Well, like, well, which is it? Is he telling the truth? Because if he's telling the truth, he dropped it in the ocean. If he lied, what, like, why would he bring up the dragon egg? Like, what's the point of Euron bringing up a half-truth story at that point? It's a lot of weird connections. So I don't necessarily like even if you believe that, like, Faceless Man was brought there or not, I don't like the idea that Euron would pay a dragon egg for an assassin. I don't think the assassin makes sense at all anyway. I don't like a Faceless Man being used to kill Balon. But even if you accept that, I don't think that the dragon egg payment really makes sense. But say like the dragon egg was, let's say we actually assume that he used the dragon egg as payment. Now it's not the Faceless Men wanting it, is it? Like, they were sitting there and Euron walks in the door and is like, here's a dragon egg. Like, they weren't actually seeking a dragon egg. They just took it as a monetary payment. Like, they didn't have some sort of grand plan for a dragon egg. So, like, nothing really makes sense in like, you can't think that the Faceless Men are seeking dragons, because there's no evidence that they're seeking dragons. One, like, Euron says he dropped the egg in the ocean. But two, like, he brought it to them. It's not like they were like, hey, we need a dragon egg, let's go out and get one. Because let me tell you, if they wanted dragon eggs, like, they could sneak in on Illyrio's manse or whatever. So as for, like, nukes can only be activated by powerful warg. I mean, the nuke, it seems like some sort of volcanic eruption or a nuclear bomb. I don't think it's necessary in the story to have a new idea with psychic powers producing a nuclear explosion. Unless they think it's the only way to, like, they have these leftover nukes from a previous civilization, and they the only way they know how to activate them is through telepathy. I mean, it's a lot. That's what I'm saying. Like, and I've seen this theory a lot. Like, it's not like this is some sort of like fringe idea. Like, I've seen this idea that, oh, the Faceless Men, they just want to kill everybody and they want to somehow, like, nuke the world somehow, or bring back dragons to burn everybody or something strange. But when you actually examine the pieces, it doesn't really fit. Like, I'm gonna selectively take pieces of Euron's story that I like, and then change the motivation of the Faceless Men, and and all sorts of things in order to get to this point in which we're basing it off of essentially an extrapolation of a story that the kindly man kind of like tells Arya. Um, which let's be honest, that was filler because George needed pages to put out a Dance with Dragons. So I don't know. I mean, oh, how far does the death cult go? Um, Bran may flee the cave after working the Green Seer. They would learn he's too powerful and try to kill him. He would learn things humanity needs to know. I mean, I think it's, Bran definitely is going to be learning things that he needs to know, that's going to change the world. But uh, he does get to that time traveling point. There's definitely a time travel. Now, what's interesting is that, maybe he discovers time travel and then the children are like, crap, abort, abort, let's kill him. And they're the ones to bring in the others. Like, it's their idea the entire time. Um, I thinking about Bran's future, it's because you think about the show and the others and the army of the dead showing up at the cave, um, because Bran like signals their location, which I never quite got because the others already knew the location, right? Like Bran is coming into the cave and they get attacked by those whites. So they already knew where Bran was. So what was the point of the mark, you know? But then it's like, well, if I understand also why they did it, like, well, we need some impetus for like why there would be like a moment where he needs to escape. But what, and discovering where they are is like a reason. Okay, so like if we're going with the book, like how do we get to the point where um how do we get to the point where the others are like trying to or the dead are trying to get to Bran, and that it's like a discovery from the children of the forest. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I'm sorry for various noise. My it's Labor Day in Taiwan, and my kid is home from school, so he's been trying to get into but it's an interesting idea that the children themselves are the ones like queuing it in and trying to stop him. um Played Crusader Kings 3 today, and you guys should totally do it. Carmine played the game and decided and you decide your lore. Oh, let Carmine play the game and you decide the lore. I was Stannis' son. I was Stannis. My son reminds me of Littlefinger. It's in beta, but still has a lot of love in the gaming castles. Yeah, Crusaders King 3 is, I mean, an insane amount of detail. An insane amount of detail in that game. And apparently it's just fun by itself. But like, just like the castle designs and the names and how everything comes together, like it's just it's really, really, you have to appreciate how much work they put into it. Like anytime you look at it. We can try to figure it out. I'll have to talk to Carmine about it. It's it looks like some fun stuff. I mean, if hopefully Carmine can figure it out. Hey Preston, I tried your burger recipe you mentioned a few streams back. It was a huge hit. The idea is not really a recipe; it's just like the simplicity of it all. That you get the fatty beef, and you cook it, a bit rare, and that's it. But I'm happy that it worked out. There's actually a I think I mentioned that there's a what's the Amy Poehler show, the um, Parks and Rec episode about this, where I think Rob Lowe tries to make some like designer sandwich, and the other guy just like puts ground beef on a bun. It's like, this is all you need, you know. So, um, I bet it's not even April where Preston is. It's true. It is May for me. Um, Death must pay for incubation. Uh, if Preston's live, he stayed up too late. Um, Hey, your content helped me a great deal while I was getting sober, and also really made me think more about what a story should be. Thank you for that, Preston. My crackpot theory: should Taisha be Tywin's bastard? Thoughts? Oof, oof. But anyway, thank you. It makes me feel very good when I hear stories like this. And you know, all of us, we just kind of need different distractions, and I think, you know, we all have addictive personalities, you know, in some degree. And if you can switch addictions to like things that are a little more things that are a little more positive and constructive, or at least fun and or neutral, you know, it's the best thing. Um, but that's fantastic. The I've heard this like Taisha uh Tyrion like half sibling story before, and this, of course, the basis of it is that Taisha has a Ty in her name, um, and thus the idea is that she might have some Lannister um, uh, name, you know, Lannister influence, you know, because I think the prefix Ty, right? Like, yes, we have Tyrion and um, Tywin, but then I think in A Dance with Dragons, he meets the Tyrion meets like the, I forget if it's the paymaster for the Second Sons. Um, his real name is is something like, let me see here. Oh, Tibero. Inkpot's real name is Tibero, and Tyrion makes a comment like, "Oh, are we actually kin?" And so there's this idea that the tie maybe implies like Lannister in some way, which I always thought was a bit funny because Tywin goes and names Jamie, his like strong, healthy kid, Jamie, and then he goes and he names his dwarf son that he's hated from the beginning, Tyrion. He gives him the Lannister name. I mean, you know, maybe he needed to compensate or something, or but it's kind of a funny thing. It doesn't really make sense that Tywin would do that, but not give Jamie a Thai name, but give Tyrion a Thai name. So this idea is that, okay, if Tywin really likes, you know, sex workers, and he impregnates a sex worker, and he pops out a kid, and then the woman would, you know, name her secretly some sort of Thai name. Um, you know, it's and that the real reason that Tywin was so aghast at this this marriage is that Taisha uh, um, is really his like sister, and there was like an incest component to it. And um, I think the theory falls apart a little bit in the sense that he then commands the girl to be gang raped, and then Tyrion participates in that gang rape at the end. Um, and if it were really like, I'm grossed out by the incest, and I really want to stop the incest, you know, I don't think that would be the way to deal with it, especially considering that like Tyrion participates in that gang bang at the end. So I think, you know, if he was really grossed out by the whole thing, he like knowing Tywin, he would have just killed the girl. Like, what, you know, like why have it be a now maybe he doesn't know and it's a big accident, but then it's like big coincidence, you know. So um so I don't know. I just, if it were really his bastard, Tywin cares enough to allow this woman to live and then get a Lannister name, but then doesn't care enough that he wants her gang raped by Tyrion, and then lets her live still. It's a bit weird to me. So I don't know if I would add that aspect to them being siblings. Um, let's see. If the Maesters know why, if the Maesters know why dragons hatch, why do they let Helena live? They seemed intent on killing all Targaryen females, but not Helena. Any thoughts? Well, Helena never hatched a dragon. She failed in hatching a dragon, so they might have thought that she was safe. Um, this it would be the idea in the theory, or the idea that, like, well, we're against Targaryens hatching dragons as long as they're not high towers, and they might think, like, the other theory is, well, we have high tower control over these people. Like, it's kind of like any nation and their feeling about nuclear weapons. Like, oh, all nations are against nuclear proliferation except for ourselves. Like, well, we'd like to keep them, but everybody else shouldn't have them. So it might be something also like that. Like, if we have high tower control, then it's okay. But you know, but also, like, Helena never hatched a dragon, so they thought maybe she was safer on the whole thing. Oh, hey Preston, do you buy the story that George R. R. Martin met D&D and asked them whose John Mother was, and they replied, R plus L, and that's how they got the show? Um, we're talking like that was the deciding factor. No, I don't think that. I think he probably had a whole bunch of other reasons for choosing D&D and things like that. I don't think that, like, I think people come up with these like like nice little stories, but um it's very rare that big decisions come down to one tiny little factor. Like, that's just not how any big decision happens. um not to get like into politics really quick, but a few streams back, um Hillary Clinton came up, and we were talking about, and some people were bringing up um the United States's decision to become militarily involved in Libya. And there was this news story, and now keep in mind, U.S. got militarily involved in Libya in 2013, and a bunch of news stories in very late 2015, early 2016 came out during the election cycle for Hillary and Trump. I mean, eventually, but this is the primary season. But a bunch of news stories came out, New York Times, about how the decision to go into Libya was all, like, it was actually Hillary that convinced Obama. That Obama was against it, or was on the fence, and, like, Hillary pushed him over. And you kind of step back and you go, okay, like, I remember that election, and, like, in Hillary's mind, she was like, oh, I want to make myself look like a strong female. People are wary of women leaders because they always ask, like, who will be willing to go to war? Would a woman really be willing to go to war? And she wanted to put these stories out there because these are all her allies and friends who, like, are the sources for this New York Times article. But if you actually step back and you go, come on, like, one, like, do you think the United States is ever on the fence about going into places militarily? But, like, but two, like, Like logically speaking, would it rest on the Secretary of State versus the Secretary of Defense? I mean, Libya has like 3 or 4% of the world's oil. Like, do you really think that like the United States was on the fence about this crap? France was already in there militarily, like all sorts of stuff. It's just like not that just don't make sense. But also like just the idea that the decision was like what's unlikely is that the decision was on the fence. Very few decisions in life you're just like, which way should I go, and then that was the deciding factor. And what I also think is disingenuous about stories like that is they try to have it both ways, in that they try to say that, oh, someone was on the fence, but also that factor was like significant. Well, if you're on the fence, the most insignificant factor, like the infinitesimally small, would knock you over to one side, right? Like let's say you're playing a basketball game that's 120 points, and you beat somebody by like one, and it's 121 to 120. Like, yeah, like one basket won it, but all the other baskets also won it for you. Like, you can't claim like one thing is so significant and important if everything was on the fence. And so this, going back to this, like whether it be Libya, like there's no way that things were on the fence and that Hillary was somehow important in knocking, because like, well, which was it? If you're on the fence, like a very infinitesimally small thing will knock you. But like, also, like, would you really be on the fence about this shit? Like, no, you'd never be on the fence about that. There's no. So like, George R. Martin, like going back to R, like D&D and R plus L equals J. What was he on the fence? And he's like, should I choose these guys or not? Like, and then this one question knocks him over. Like, no, that doesn't make any sense. like they're not going to be on the fence about these guys. Like, or even if they answered wrong, do you think he's really going to be like, well, it's a kind of, maybe we should read up on this stuff. Like, there was a lot of vetting and contracts and like searching for people. Like, the idea that things come down to like one decision. Like, anytime a story is presented to me like that, we're like, oh, it all came down to this one little thing. No, it didn't. Like, no, it didn't. Like, very, very, very rarely in life, I mean, maybe if you're at the grocery store and like a 1 penny difference like can make you choose one product over another, but really, like, this huge show, like, do you think like D&D, if like, let's say they answered it incorrectly, do you think George R. Martin would have been like, let's start from the beginning? Like, he was fearful that that HBO was gonna like not even push forward the show. Like, they had a failed pilot, you know. I don't know. It's just so no. Long story short, no. I don't really believe the story of that's how they got the show. No, I don't buy it. I think he asked them the question, but I don't think it was like the decisive factor. No, that's ridiculous. No. Um, what associate city is closest with Old Town, the High Towers? Um, well, it would have to be Lice right now, right? Because Liness is with the Merchant Prince. Now, if we're talking during the time of the Dance of the Dragons, um, it's also, well, they do align with the sisters during that period of time, um, but only because they were so anti Daemon and so anti Valarian. So like before the war, there's not much connection, but then the Greens align with the three sisters, and then many years later, Liness marries a merchant prince from Lice. So I guess it would be Lice. Um, we don't hear any other connections with, say, Bravos or Pentos or anything like that with them. So it's the only one we've heard about. If Rhaegar lived and became king, do you think he would have to contend with Dorne supporting Rhaenys over Aegon? Um, being the eldest child, would Dorn rally to her? Would Elia support her, Gilbert King? uh, it's an interesting thing that people don't talk about too much. You know, like what is the eventual Dornish influence of Elia over Rhaegar in the long term? Um, you know, and especially considering the say he was trying to pull a paramour with Lyanna and all sorts of crazy stuff, but it's an interesting idea to bring to think about. Um, I suppose I suppose the theory that Oberyn puts forward is that Dornish law rules in Dorne, and therefore Myrcella is in Dorne, and then she's going to be she's queen by all laws. And so you would have to have a similar situation where Rhaenys at some point travels to Dorne during that period of time, and then the same issue comes up. Um, but it's not. It doesn't like no Dornish person really thinks about it until Oberyn like makes a stink. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, like they like no one would assume that, like, oh, they're from King's Landing, they're the national law rules over Dorne, whatever kingdom, provincial, state law. It's only Oberyn's crazy thing, like where he comes out with this like theory out of his butt, and then everybody kind of rallies behind it because they either love Oberyn or want to go to war for whatever reasons. So I don't, not that Elia's Dornish influence wouldn't have done something, and maybe she'd eventually try to get nationalized Dornish law, Seven Kingdoms Dornish law, and then you'd have a problem. But I don't think anyone would. I mean, I guess Oberyn would still be alive, so Oberyn might come up with that idea, that, but he'd have to get Rhaenys to Dorne and then pull the same thing again. So I mean, it if Oberyn felt like it, Oberyn and Dorne felt like it, and they somehow got Rhaenys to visit Dorne, and they wanted to create a stink. I suppose that could have been a thing, but um, I have to think about like what would be the Dornish master plan if Rhaegar was were still king. It's a big rabbit hole of what ifs. Um, what's the point of Jalbar Zoe? Jalbar Joe. Uh, do we know how to do the XH Jalbar Joe Jalbar show? He could just be an oddity, but he's mentioned often enough that he seems like a setup for something. Um, yeah, I mean, I'd like Jalbar to have some sort of like increased role. Like he's kind of a joke the entire story, right? As this like nothing dude who's just lingering at court because Robert thinks he's entertaining, and that he wants to take back the Summer Isles. He must have some sort of political allies, right? Um, I think in the small scale, he's just supposed to be a Viserys. Just kind of a a useless guy who's like lingering around, hoping someone will give him a throne, um, which is what Viserys was doing, right? Like staying with people and hoping that they would eventually like team up and support him and give him a throne. So I mean, I think in that sense, that's what he's supposed to be. Um, this kind of like weird other version of Viserys. But then he lingers on for in the story just because he was there. So I'd like him to continue, but I don't know if George really had much of a point for him. I mean, he's locked in the cells at the end, right? Um, as a potential person who had sex with Marjorie. So, George might just like kill the dude off at some point. But of course, if he kills the dude off, maybe that would cause like Summer Islanders to be angry and then all of a sudden support a certain cause. So and all of a sudden Summer Islanders can join the war. So that'd be the simplest way to wrap him up, right? Is just have him killed or die in the black cells, and then have a bunch of Summer Islanders show up in a final battle and be like, "We're angry that you killed Jella Barzell," So, um, that'd be the easiest way. But I would personally like something more interesting than that. Will you ever do a live stream where you're playing Disco Elysium? It's a huge thought provoking game. Best writing of the year. I mean, I need to set up my um, computer to play video games at the same time. Um, there's it's surprisingly difficult to set up your computer like with while playing like computers and recording and doing everything at the same time. It's it's um it's amazingly like difficult. Like you have to buy special equipment to have everything sync. Like all of these game streamers that do it have the equipment. It's just like I wish it were something as easy as just anybody on their computer could do it. But maybe the software is coming. But Disco Elysium, huh? Here's a little image from it. Hold on a second. I've not actually even like the name of the video game is um I've heard it, but it's okay. So it's a huh non-traditional game. Just features distinctive art oil painting art style. Fictional city recovering from a siege which occurred decades before. Players take the role of an amnesiac detective who has been tasked with solving a murder, and recalls mysteries about the events. Non-traditional, very little combat. Um, Everything is resolved through skill checks and dialogue trees. Huh, that's interesting. It does remind me a bit of when I was young. So computer games, like way back in the day, there was a whole bunch of text based computer games because like we didn't have like too many graphics. So if you wanted an adventure game, there was a whole bunch of text based computer games where you like type in like it'll say like you're playing a text game and it'll say like you enter a room, there's a fireplace and a candlestick, and in the middle is a table with a bowl, and you can be like, look bowl, and they'd be like, bowl doesn't look like anything unusual. You're like, okay. Look candlestick, you move the candlestick and the fireplace opens up, and you're like, okay, like these were the games. Like there was one that was called Amnesia that I played when I was young that I always thought was really interesting because it was you wake up in New York City naked in a hotel room, not knowing who you are. And from there you try to like figure out who you are and like discover your plot, and like you walk around New York City, and they have all of New York City is actually like mapped out in a grid, and it's it was far too difficult for me and I could never get it done. But I still always remember like the cool concept of like, well, you have amnesia and you're trying to figure out who you are. Anyway, this is it's certainly interesting uh, idea. Um, yes, Carmine figuring out Crusader Kings 3. Um, If wildlings are going to take over the wall, is it possible for Val to kill Shireen, and that will align with the show? Um, I mean, I think that definitely George's original plan was for Stannis to kill Shireen. Um, Now I'm not sure if we're going to do that, say in the fanfic or whatever, but I think it's pretty clear that D&D fully divulged that in an interview with George he mentioned that Stannis was going to kill Shireen, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that like helps confirm this in the sense that like there are previous drafts of A Dance with Dragons where he starts talking about Meleys the Monstrous, and the reason that Meleys the Monstrous was not actually the fact that he had a second head coming out of his neck, but the fact that he killed his own young, um, in some sort of prophecy sense, which is just like this horrific thought, like who would kill their own child, and so I think George was going to have that happen to Stannis, or that was his original idea. Now, whether he's going to go through with that, or if we're ever going to get the Winds of Winter, or anything like that, um, I don't know. But like the so I mean, you're right that like Val has already stated that she thinks that Shireen should be killed. like that's just what she thinks. Because of the grayscale. So it's something that Val would do, certainly. But I don't know if that would be George's plan. I mean, maybe it's maybe something we could do with the fanfic. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I have to think through like Shireen's future, because there's other things that I think are so much fun, like more fun. Like yeah, there's things that are dark and like vicious, but at the same time, like Justin Massey, like going to the like being told like put my daughter on the throne if you think I'm dead, like that's so much more fun to me. Like Justin Massey like running off with Shireen, than because he's just such a likable character that like it's too bad that you just kill everybody off when you've got that cool idea. You're in May. Time traveling Preston confirmed. It's true. Um, are you familiar with Joe Magician's theory about the 5-year gap? Pretty Maris is Brienne after the 5-year gap. Tatters is Jamie. Kago Corpse Killer is Sandor. I think my criticism of that would be George R. R. Martin abandoned the 5-year gap pretty quick. Like he abandoned it in like the first 6 months, to between the first 6 months and a year of writing A Feast for Crows. Like it's not that he hadn't come up with various ideas, and I think some people talk about, well, maybe um, uh, uh, Ned Dane was Darkstar, and stuff like that, and it's like, okay, well, I'm willing to accept timeline wise that could be the case. But the problem with, say, someone like the Tattered Prince or Kago Corpse Killer or Pretty Maris is I think they are introduced relatively late in A Dance with Dragons. Let me bring up the. I mean, probably when like the are they in the wind? I'm guessing they're going to be in the Windblown chapter. Would be the first introduction. Pretty much Daenerys 7. Huh. She's not even in the Windblown chapter? Maybe they mentioned some sort of like woman or something, but like um or Kago. So I think I'd be very surprised. Even Kago, Corpse Killer, I can't even find him. Oh, I'm sorry. So the Search of Ice and Fire, I don't know what they did, but they did some update where they changed stuff, and it is practically unusable. I don't know what they did, but it's just like all the checkboxes like stay on and stay on hidden, and it's unusable right now. So like I don't know what they did. It's just atrocious. Um, so okay, the Windblown is when they all first appear. So you kind of say, well, like when did George write the Windblown chapter? And um, did he get around to writing that by the time he abandoned the 5 year gap? Because in those early drafts of a dance with they called it a dance with he called it a dance with dragons back then. We didn't see those chapters. We saw early Danny's. We saw early a few early Johns, like early Tyrion's. But the idea that they had been working on Quentin, when we also know that he like that was the whole Myronese knot thing. That was the last thing. Was actually like Quentin chapters. Like Quentin Barristan Victorian chapters were kind of the last thing he wrote, um, with the Myronese knot with the Dance with Dragons. So I think that it's pretty unlikely when we're talking the 5 year gap being abandoned in 2006 and him finishing. I'm sorry, the 5 year gap being abandoned in 2000 or 2001, and then him writing the Quentin chapters in probably 2009, 2010. That the 5 year gap would influence that. You could you could probably like argue it better for Dark Star or something. And the only even when we talk about the 5 year gap with Dark Star, which I don't know about that one either, but the theory is that Edric Dane has always was supposed to be really important. He was supposed to be very important. If you look at the Game of Thrones appendix, the Game of Thrones appendix lists the bannermen of Doran Martell, and he lists. Let me see here. Keep in mind that like Doran, I don't even know if Doran is mentioned in a Game of Thrones. He's certainly mentioned in Clash of Kings, but we go to House Martell, and the characters that he lists in the appendix of a Game of Thrones are Doran, Malario, Arianne, Quentin, Trystane, Elia, Rhaenys, Aegon, Oberyn, Hota, Calliope, and Edric Dane. Right? Those are the first Dornish characters that he envisioned. And so, I could see someone saying, well, Edric Dane has not had any importance in the story at all. We're 5 books in. He is this is a guy that George from the first thought was going to be really important enough that he is, I mean, eliminating like Elia and his sisters. He's like, there's 10 living Dornish characters, and he's one of them. That what Dornish characters have been important? Well, Darkstar. So maybe like Darkstar plot was given. Maybe he was supposed to be Darkstar. So maybe, but I couldn't see it for the others. Gildain writes in Baratheon period. How else could he air T's laundry? Fire and Blood not yet out. Rushing to print as part of Old Town's counter to Targaryen. Okay. Gildain writes in the Baratheon period. How else could he air Targaryen laundry? Fire and Blood not yet out. Rushing to print as part of Old Town counter to Targaryen restoration. So I was complaining that Fire and Blood, I forget if it was last stream, but I was complaining that Fire and Blood has some problems in that there's a lot of things that are kind of debates or considered not that important among characters in the story that Fire and Blood very clearly like outlines and talks about. And I bring up the 2 big examples where it doesn't really make sense that Fire and Blood would be a book within story. Like George R. R. Martin designed Fire and Blood to be a book within story that exists in the world of Ice and Fire, and yet Tyrion this very educated man, and Halden Halfmaester, this very educated man, have this debate about about um, about dragons that is in Fire and Blood, and both of them are like, "What? I've never heard this other theory." Like, or having this back and forth, and it's like, well, Gildain just presents both sides in Fire and Blood. Like, why would a character? Why would Tyrion be showing how smart he is by bringing things in from various sources, and Halden Halfmaester be surprised if that exact conversation was already presented in Fire and Blood? It doesn't make any sense. It ruins the Tyrion Halden Halfmaester scene, because all of a sudden Tyrion's not that smart. He's just taken somebody else's argument. He hasn't constructed it himself, which is like, when you read it, you're supposed to be like, oh, Tyrion's so smart. He constructed his own like argument. And Halden is it's impressive because like Halden's smart and he was outdone by Tyrion. Now Halden's an idiot because he didn't read Fire and Blood. He didn't read Fire and Blood, and Tyrion is just some dude that read Fire and Blood. Like, it's, it completely takes away like the entire scene. The other one being Ariana and Aerys Oakheart have a discussion about the Dance of the Dragons, where they talk about Kristen Cole being such an important character and trying to steal Rhaenyra's birthright, and that he can make up for like this guy being the kingmaker by setting things right. But like, that's not the story in Fire and Blood, because it was retconned. Like like Kristen Cole's role was almost nothing, and there was clearly going to be a Dance with Dragons anyway because of Otto Hightower and stuff like this. So like, Fire and Blood being a book in universe doesn't make much sense. Now, there's some ways out of it. Like, okay, maybe the book was just published, or published. I mean, they didn't publish stuff; they wrote it, right? Or maybe there's not that many copies of Fire and Blood because things are written by hand, and it's be very difficult for Tyrion to get a hold of Fire and Blood. Maybe there's only like one copy at the Citadel. Maybe there's only 2 copies, which that's also quite likely, and that Halden Halfmaester already left, like it was written like within the last 10 years. Those are all possibilities. Originally, Fire and Blood was supposed to be released in story like earlier. Like, Gildain was supposed to live during a certain period, but then it was changed to being later, so that Fire and Blood Part 2 could go on and go on and on. But anyway, that's long story. But yes, all of these ideas could be there. I suppose the simplest one is just that there's only like one copy of Fire and Blood. He just wrote it. He just etched the whole thing down. You have to be at the Citadel to read it, and these guys aren't at the Citadel. That's probably the simplest one. Did Varys and Illyrio hire faceless men to kill Bloodraven, possibly giving Illyrio's firstborn daughter the waif to the temple as payment? Huh. Well, the second part I've never heard before. I did have a theory that, yeah, if, and this is based on a few things, and that is there's a scene in A Dance with Dragons where Arya goes through a guy's clothing, and she finds a coin, and she can't figure out what king is on the head, which is kind of ridiculous, because she can figure out all sorts of stuff. They go through the scene where she can work things out and figure out everything. So the fact that she can't figure out the king's face is a little odd, because it's either going to be Robert or it's going to be Aerys. There's not there it's not too hard. And then at the same time, when Pate gets a dragon from Jaqen Agar, he also can't figure out the king on the face, which is also ridiculous. Like, why? Like, Pate's not that dumb. Like, he should know like Robert or Aerys or whatever. And even the kings before that, there's not that many. There's not that many kings. Like, you have to know 5 faces. I mean, or come on. Now this scene was this exact same situation was done in the Mystery Night with Dunk. And Dunk gets a coin and he can't figure out what king is on it, and then he figures out that the king on it is Damon Blackfire, and that they had minted their own coins. And so, the idea is that maybe not specifically Varys and Illyrio, but some Blackfire supporters or people that had Blackfire gold paid Faceless Men to do sorts of things, and that payment was being sent to them, and that Jaqen was paid with Blackfire gold, which kind of goes into my whole theory that Jaqen Agar's target is Bloodraven. Just based on the fact that he's in the Black Cells and he's on a trip to go and join the Night's Watch, and then he's looking for a glass candle. It seems like his mark would be north of the Wall, and that the candle is going to help him find somebody that's difficult to find. Who's difficult to find? Who's north of the Wall? Well, I mean, Stone Snake. Yeah, obviously it's Stone Snake. He's trying to kill Stone Snake this entire time. He's got to find the dude. So I chose, I thought Bloodraven. Now, the waif being the payment. That's what does the waif say about her background? Anything? All we know is that she's old, right? She's supposed to be a pale little girl. She's a grown woman, 36 years of age, she claims. I'm trying to think Illyrio's age. Is that too old? Is that too old for Illyrio? Is Illyrio in his 50s? Do we know anything about Illyrio's age? I suppose if we don't know Illyrio's age, it's possible. I mean, that's I mean, I guess it's possible. I mean, there's not much information there to refute it one way or the other. But we don't know Illyrio's age. I do think there's evidence that Jaqen has been hired by, or that I do think there's evidence that Blackfire money is going to the House of Black and White. There's some evidence that Jaqen's mark is north of the Wall, who's hard to find. So maybe. It's possible. Follow up: Daemon and the twins. In view of Daemon being dutiful, he may have thought them because the Targs needed more girls. Viserys got first dibs. Daemon would have refused to marry the girls to Aemon, and Daron. See, it's an interesting idea that also that maybe Daemon knew that he would be refused, but he did it just be like, because he wanted to make the marriage. His real mark was actually Jacaerys, but he offered him to Aegon and Aemond as a fake out. Jacaerys got first dibs. Aemond would have refused to marry the girls. I mean, certainly, I think certainly if Viserys ordered it, Daemon would have had to accept, But one thing to also think about. So when marriages happen before marrying age, like 16 years old, it's done because there is like a very needed, desperate political reason. Otherwise, you let your kid grow up and like, rather than betrothing them at a super young age. You kind of think of like Tyrek Lannister and like, him being forced to be engaged to a baby, and how, how crappy that is, um and so these two, these kids are like betrothed at like the ages of babies, and you're like, well, what's the political reason for it, and what's the desperate political reason for it? And Rhaenyra saw the writing on the wall. Like, she knew what was coming, and she wanted to get that alliance down. And so they marry these, they betroth these kids young. Um, yeah, but I suppose there are a few other situations where I think Balon was betrothed to his. Uh, when I say Balon, Viserys and Daemon's dad, I think he might have been betrothed at a very young age to his wife. Um, but what's the political reason? And so it's kind of like, what would be the need, at that point, like, yeah, to betroth these babies to adult boys. Um, and so, because it's a big ask when you think about it, right? Like, say you're Aegon. He, at the time of, so the year is, they're born in like 115, right? And Aegon is, at the time, he's born in 107, so he's about 8 years older than Rhaenys and Baela. So, like, he gets to be 16, and he wants to get married and have sex and start producing kids, and his brides are only 8. His bride is only 8, so he's gotta wait, at least until they're getting to 12, 13 years old. um, and so there's a bit of impractical, there's impractical aspect to it. And so you only kind of do those weird marriages when it's like political necessity, like, no, we need an alliance now. So sorry, you're married to somebody way young. Um, and so I think people would probably say, well, is it really needed for Aegon to be betrothed to an 8-year-old at this point? I mean, he's going to be turning 16, and that's like 4 or 5 years where he's not producing any heirs, and he doesn't have to have, um, waiting for the kid to grow up. So I think it would just be kind of, unless there was a real need, a real political need, a desperate political need, which I don't think in Viserys's mind there was. Like, in Viserys's mind, Rhaenyra's the heir. These other kids are just chilling. Why betroth them? Um, so, plus, I'm also thinking about, like, the egg thing. Like, yeah, I suppose Viserys could order Rhaenyra to give, like, eggs to the girls, but it's more, you know she certainly wouldn't want to give eggs to high towers, who, I mean, I guess she I don't we don't know where Sunfire came from or anything like that, but she certainly wouldn't like that. Huh. She'd certainly be angry about it. But yeah, I think the age thing might be a little off for somebody trying to propose those betrothals outside of like a desperate political need. Um, any strong thoughts on what John's role will be going forward in the last 2 books? Judging how you don't want to bring him back in the fan fiction, he doesn't seem like he'd be one of your favorites, huh? No, I mean, I do like John. I think the main reason for not wanting to bring John back in the fan fiction is that there's just not enough time. Like, there's, I think many have watched the um who did it? It was the video by, I don't want to get his name wrong. Admiral Kurd. Admiral Kurd did a video called "How Can the Winds of Winter Fit into How Can the Winds of Winter Fit into the Winds of Winter?" Um, And the basic thesis, like, you know, you can go through the video, and it's a um you can disagree with his numbers here and there, and where he thinks the story is going here and there, but the fundamental premise and the fundamental thesis of it is there's way too many there's way too much story to fit into one book. And we found this. I mean, it's proven to be correct. Like, George is like, this has to be this will be one of the biggest books ever, you know. And um just in the simple situation of, like, if you're going to give every point of view, like, at least 2 chapters, and the major points of view like up to 5, um how does your math work out to get to like 75 chapters, you know? um so all that's true. um and so I think, like, one of the most helpful solutions for this is to just cut John. And then you have many fewer chapters to deal with. And I mean, the big solution is, like, yeah, significantly cut John, significantly cut Tyrion, significantly cut Daenerys. Like, cut John completely, cut Tyrion down to 5 or 6, cut Daenerys down to 5 or 6, and that's where you're finding your space. I think.
Hey, there's.
Let me see here. Let me see if I can get to his. This isn't necessarily too, like, visually good on the screen, but, like, let me see if I can take a screenshot of this and see if I can blow it up a little. It's hard to see. So I think in his video, you know, he kind of creates these, like, lists of like high number of chapters, low number of chapters, and like a reasonable number of chapters for various people. And, you know, um I just, for each of these, you kind of say, well, no, there's no way I would do that many. You know, like if you eliminate John, you're cutting 5, cut Tyrion down to 5, cut Dany down to 5, and then cut Cersei down to 4. He's got Jamie and Brienne having 4 each. Cut them down to 3 apiece. You know, stuff like that to make room. This is the, you know, like, the most important thing. But and that's the way you do it. But I think it's more. I think keeping John dead is more of a practical situation. Now, what do I think George's original plan was? I think George's original plan is that he was going to bring John back, and I don't know if he's going to be a point of view. He might have been like Catelyn, where you don't have a point of view again. And that I imagine that it would have involved like a religious. I think he would have had a religious cult following him, and that it would create kind of this problem of people wanting John for a number of reasons. Like, you know, you bring a guy back from like, not in the show, because the show he comes right back from the dead, and it's not significant at all that he's come back from the dead. It has no impact. So, like, but I think him coming back from the dead is you have a bunch of zealots like worshiping him. It's one of the things the show really didn't go into too much, did it? Like, it kept bringing up the fact that, like, oh, we might get these religious zealots at various points, and then the religious zealots just kind of never happened. Like, we had this religious leader in King's Landing who was a zealot. You had Melisandre, who was a zealot. You had Tyrion and Varys playing around with zealots in Slaver's Bay, and you kept thinking that, like, oh, these religious zealots are going to play a huge role in the story, and they never did. You know, like these individuals might have, but you didn't have like a mass movement of zealots like doing anything. Like, after the blowing up of the Sept, like, it's not like the sparrows did anything. Like the thousands of sparrows that should have been doing something, they didn't do anything. Um, even Beric Dondarrion's like group of zealots vanished from the story without a trace. Kind of weird, but like I think that the original idea was that John would have come back and he would have had like a bunch of zealots like following him as a Christ character who rose from the dead, um, and that would have been a problem, you know. But they never did it. They never did anything with that, you know. None of it. It's kind of weird, right? You literally have a character coming back from the dead and no zealots. You literally have like a woman who's supposed to be fulfilling prophecy and no zealots. You, you literally have characters who are like trying to gather zealots around, and then they all die, and you're like, well, the zealots just disappear. Kind of weird. I mean, the only ones that could be considered zealots in the end would possibly be the Dothraki after the second pyre incident. Hmm. D&D answered in a way that made clear they've read and thought about the books. Low bar in Hollywood doesn't mean they were right about John's mother. I mean, in the end, it's like how I saw the show play out. I guess that looked like it could be George's answer. Like, not that George like didn't leave it open, because he likes to leave things open, but he the fact that like rather than it being the solution to the problem, which is what the fandom was so wrong about, it was part of the problem. Like R plus L equals J was not the solution. Like you got to understand like how ridiculous the fandom was at one point, how they just were convinced that Ice and Fire was some sort of like classic fantasy novel of like John fulfilling prophecy, and like you know all of the stars aligning behind R plus L equals J, and the whole kingdom like uniting behind their Aragorn character. Like they so many were like hook, line, and sinker into this concept, which didn't fit the themes of or the writing style of George R. R. Martin at all. And so it being something that just causes more and more conflict and causes tragedy is George R. R. Martin's style. So like I think the show's ending more or less was his original outline, like R plus L equals J, leading to a conflict between John and Danny, which led to them like destroying each other. That would be my guess. Not that George couldn't change his mind and keep everything open. Um, Helena may have never hatched a dragon, but I'll be darned if her ex Gene inheriting children conveniently died. Coincidence? I think not. No, I don't. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that they were definitely killed by a conspiracy. It's yeah. The weird thing is that they allowed the weird thing that I think is pretty inconsistent in the story that would go against like Maester conspiracy. It would be the marriage of Aegon and Helena. Like, why on earth would they allow that to happen? It's Otto, uh, Otto or Allison should have been against that if they were controlled by the Citadel. Um, it's just very weird. They should have. It also like it's bad strategic sense. Like if you're trying to win a war that you know is coming, why would you waste your marriages like that? Um, I don't, I just don't think. Yeah, I mean, I don't see how Aegon getting married to Helena makes any sense in anybody's mind. like um, I mean, unless like Alicent herself goes rogue and wants to like produce dragons and keep the blood of the dragon pure. Um, but why would anyone else, like why would a Maester conspiracy or a Hightower conspiracy or someone trying to win a war or any of these things, like why would they marry Aegon to Helena? um it's maybe if they thought it was more legitimacy, but it doesn't really make any sense because people aren't sitting there going, yes, No one in Westeros is going, yes, incest makes legitimacy. Like, like you'd be impressing you'd be impressing a bunch of Targaryen Valyrian lovers that don't exist. Um, I think it was a bad choice from George. Honestly, like doesn't really align why Aegon would ever be married to Helena. Oh well, oh well. Um, Considering the magical properties of Dragon's Breath, wonder if it could be used to break the wards protecting Bloodraven's cave. Fun for Jaqen Hagar's hit and Euron's eggs. Um, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's interesting that they actually bring the Dragonfire thing up in the show, right? That we naturally think, oh, we need Dragon's Fire. It's the only thing that can burn all of these like whites and others, and then it doesn't even work against the others. Like the others are immune to fire. Um, so what was the point of the dragons? Well, the point of the dragons was to bring down the wall, I guess. A certain irony that the dragons weren't there to. I mean, I guess it gets back into R plus L equals J. Like these things that we think are the natural solutions are actually part of the problem. I guess is the George R. R. Martin thing about it. You know, the the dragon just makes a white dragon and brings down the wall. Like the dragons are actually the problem. R plus L equals J is actually the problem. It's not the solution. Like from the beginning, we kind of assume, like reading the story, the solution to these others are the dragons, right? Like we all come to that conclusion, um, and they're actually the problem, not the solution. The thing about nuclear weapons. Oh, we think nuclear weapons are the solution. Keep the peace, and they're actually the problem. So um, but yeah, could the dragon's breath break the ward? I don't know if we'll ever find out, just timeline wise. Like Danny and her dragons are so far away, and Bran needs to break free from that cave relatively soon. Relatively soon. He can't be waiting around in that cave until A Dream of Spring. Like Jesus, that would be boring. um, have you ever considered the fact that the cat's ball was sent by Future Bran in an attempt to break the loop? Maybe he discovers Jojen paste. I've never been satisfied with alternate explanations. Um, yeah, I do think in the end it's Future Bran causing Littlefinger or causing Mance Raider or something. I mean, I think ultimately it is a plan of Bran, but at the same, I think Bran caused himself to fall from the tower and things like that in order to try to break the loop. That it's you know, I mean, I kind of come to this idea that it's Groundhog's Day, and that he's just trying some really crazy stuff. He's tried so many different things, and now he's coming to like this crazy moment where he's got to do some nuts things to get Bran north of the wall early, because he think like he needs to have his mom head south in order for him to be alone at Winterfell, so that he can head north. He needs to remove Rob and his mom and Theon and everybody from Winterfell for all the events to occur. So the Catspaw dagger seems to be part of that. But yeah, and but I think there's somebody else involved. I think either Littlefinger or Mance or something. But yeah, the explanations that are given in book, which the alternate explanations, I think everybody in the fandom kind of accepts are really dumb. It's not that people haven't accept, like many people accept it. Like, no, that's what George wrote. He's that's it. We're done with it. It's stupid, but it's done. But uh, I don't know anyone that likes the explanation. Like no one sits there and says, yes, Joffrey, like no one, I've never met anyone that's like, no, that was really good. That was a really good surprise. I've heard some apologists that are like, it could make sense, but I've never heard anyone say, yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chris. Um, I appreciate it. Um, is there any great house that is anti magic? Lannisters or Aarons, maybe? Hmm. That's an interesting one because the only one that we kind of hear of that we think might be anti magic because of like Maester conspiracies are the High Towers, but they're specifically said to also engage in magic and necromancy and all sorts of stuff. So it's that's kind of funny. Um, but any great houses that could be anti-magic, Lannister or Aaron's. The only one that could possibly and again it contradicts itself, but the only one that I could also see being kind of anti-magic would be the Boltons because they used to skin Starks. And it might be that they're skinning Starks because they think they can take their skins and gain their powers or something, which is kind of like a George R. R. Martin story called In the Lost Lands. But then then Bruce Bolton goes and reads weird books and has leeches and stuff and tries to stay young. I mean, and tries to get bad humors out. I mean, maybe that's science. Maybe he burned that book at Harrenhal because he's against magic. It's hard to say, but that would be the only one I could think of that might um that could work out. Um, love all your work for the community. Was wondering what's your opinion on polyamory in life and in A Song of Ice and Fire. Is it feasible long term? Huh. Um, I don't know if in the story they ever deal with polyamory so much. They deal with polygamy, but polygamy is never really like polyamory, right? Polyamory being this idea that like all the parties involved are like intermingling versus polygamy, which is just like one person being married to X and they're married to Y and but the idea of like Jorah and Hisdar and Dario having a three-way or being polyamorous is kind of amusing. But polyamory in life, um, it's not something I really like have thought about too much. I've met polyamorous groups. You can't even say couple, right? I've met polyamorous groups. Like certainly polyamory isn't for me. I don't. I could never handle polyamory. That just wouldn't be something that I could handle. Um, but could I conceivably see it working with others? Um, I suppose I suppose I could. I don't necessarily see anything wrong with it. Like it, polygamy is a bit weird because like polygamy marriage has all sorts of like financial obligations and odd things about like stature and I don't know like how well I think polygamy actually exists in the places that have it, which is the Middle East. Like you tend not to see it functioning so fantastic. Usually the first wife has a lot more rights, but at the same time gets jealous because the younger wives get more attention, or the younger wife gets most attention and such. I haven't researched it too much, but I don't know. But it's not for me. It's not for me certainly, but I don't know. I mean, George R. Martin would probably be against marriage in general, saying that like it's an archaic institution um, that causes more problems than it solves. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I understand why I got married, and I understand the practical nature of marriage on a number of levels. Um, but um, but I don't know. It, this is a long discussion on marriage because like um there are little things like you know when I legally bond myself with another person, especially when I start thinking about like procreation and assets and things like that, like it's very easy and streamlined to know that like if I die, everything is in the hands of my wife, and that's fine. And it's very easy to know that like when you're dealing with the hospital, that there's somebody that you trust legally to make, like if you're say incapacitated, or who will inherit your children, who will inherit your property, who can make medical decisions for you, like that kind of stuff, like in a practical sense in the world that we've constructed, like makes marriage like very useful. I don't know if those fall apart with polygamy. I haven't really thought about it too much or read any articles on it, but it seems like it might be a disagreement that if I say I had two wives and I died, what would happen to my property and my children and things like this, and who would have a decision over like if I'm put in a coma, who can pull the plug and stuff like that. So I don't see how practically it's as easy as having one single partner making those decisions. um Once you remove like money and children and stuff like that, then there's just like, well, then why, then you're just whatever. Like marriage means different things to different people. Like for some people marriage is a contract, for some people marriage is holy matrimony or some sort of like lifelong promise and things like this. It means different things to different people, but like you know it, not that it doesn't necessarily mean those things to me, but it's like if I didn't see the practical aspect of all the things in society that like marriage provides, like you know i I wouldn't see necessarily any function for it. Like like I love my wife, I'd stay with my wife if we weren't married. So what's the point of the marriage? Well, the point of the marriage is all of these little things. And then like polygamy just kind of like screws up all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Like I've met some people that like are fine and like are pushing like like three people marriages and stuff, and I just don't know if it would work out. Seems a little weird. All right, hello Carmine.
What's the haps?
You've come in for the polygamy polyamory discussion, but I don't know.
Oh Jesus.
I know.
You know it
Call me old fashioned, but it just seems practical for one person to be making the decision, and that's about
I'm,
it.
I'm gonna tell the audience something, and I'm gonna say this
Mm,
honestly as I possibly can. I swear on my grandmother's ashes, and I'm not just saying this
yeah.
because we're friends. I love you. I'm gonna tell this to the audience. I've known a lot of YouTubers
Mm.
who really get into YouTube for the Bob and the Vagine,
Oh
and
yes.
um, and Preston is the one of the very few pure individuals who has no intentions of like hooking up with random good-looking women because of his YouTube fame or whatever. Like you are incredibly pure, and Lord knows I've tried to tempt you as much as an asshole as I am, but you have remained steadfast.
Um, I was having a I was having a conversation because so power is a big aphrodisiac, and even though having a YouTube channel is nothing, but still people perceive it as power. Or like so I have a buddy who runs a business, and he had hired on like a whole bunch of like young interns, and things like that. And for his job, he had to host a lot of happy hours, and like events, partying events. And so I remember I go to one of his events, and he's got all these like attractive um, young people, and I asked him, I was like, dude, do they ever like, because you're the boss? Like, do they ever like hit on you? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, oh yeah. And I was like, ugh, isn't it kind of dangerous? Like, because you're like in a drinking environment with all these like attractive people hitting on you. And he says to me, the only thing I think about when I go to these events and that kind of thing happens is how easy it is for me to completely ruin my entire fucking life. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's like, I do not drink. I have like one drink at these things and that's it. Like, because you start logically, it's a lot like putting the alarm clock on the other side of the room, like knowing that like, oh, I'm going to be tired in the morning. Like, you know yourself and you know not to trust yourself. You know what you want and you know the things that can fuck that up. So like he knows that like what he wants is to stay with his wife and have his family and things like that. And so he purposely like puts barriers. He's just like, no, I would screw my life up 100%. Like what, you know, it's you're just playing with fire. And
No, I
so
get what you're saying. By the way, do you have like that echo thing on your stream
I
settings?
do. Are you hearing echo? I can pop on that. Okay.
Someone
Oh,
said they were.
okay.
No, what I mean by that is that to the audience, Preston is just super fucking pure. He's just a really pure guy. Like you really are. That's why it always tickles my fancy to so to speak when someone tries to call you like a horrible evil person. I'm like, this guy. I still remember years ago when we were talking about Magor's wife. What's her name? Tana of the Tower,
Yeah.
and she killed Jaehaerys's brother. And during that podcast recording, I removed this in the actual recording. During the podcast recording, I'm like, wow, she killed this kid. What a bitch. And Preston's like, Carmine, let's not call women bitches now. Come on. Like, Preston, she killed and shot Carmine. Let's not reduce ourselves to that level. Come on. Like, yo, this guy. You're a nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, I will not say that I am I have been a very moral human being. Like, you know, there was no, I've done a lot of bad things in my life, and so I'm no
Stop it. No,
way.
you
Oh my
haven't.
god.
You're incredible. What? You're so nice. Every now and then, you will catch me off guard with like some savage shit. Like I've said this to you. I've said, did I say this last stream last week? Like you're a secret barbarian. Like, but you just stay in the cave. You're a caveman who just stays in the cave. You're a savage. Like every now and then, you'll come out of nowhere with like a fucking rip on someone. I'm like, God damn.
You're like, I wish I
Jesus.
recorded that. I was like, the only reason I had the rip
Yo.
is because we weren't getting recorded. No, like, look, you just you know what you want later in life, and there, you know, I'm not screwing these things up. I'm not gonna fuck it up. There's like risk and return on various stuff. Like, you know, Jesus, you know, you just don't want to screw that up. Um, Disco Elysium, greatest game ever made. Have you played Disco Elysium, Carmine?
I have not. It's on the list actually. I'm going through Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and yeah. By the way, I know you were talking about the Crusader Kings 3 mod. I'm actually gonna wait a year so
Yeah.
they can get like all the kinks out and
Oh,
add some
before
stuff
playing it.
because there's a lot of really good stuff for CK2 Game of Thrones mod now that I wish they had it on the CK3. For example, I know we discussed this before, but there's a sub mod for CK2. Do you mind if I go into this? I don't want
Sure,
to
sure.
interrupt. And the reason I bring this up is because I think I've shown you this before, but I'll show it to you in the audience again if you want to upload it. I'll try to find it real quick. So there's a sub mod for the mod. It's called Bloodlines. And in Bloodlines, the one thing I always do every time I start up the game is I always go looking for Robert's Bastards. There's like 12 of them. And the reason I know. And the reason why is because Robert's Bastards have these fucking custom made sigils for where they're from. For example, Maya Stone, if you find her and you legitimize her, she gets her own house. And she gets her own custom sigil, which is stag, because of her father, and because she's from the Vale, the stag's horns is a crescent moon. It's the coolest thing ever. I'm
Yeah.
trying to see if I can find it to show you. It's so cool.
So they went with the Maggie the Frog prophecy number for the number of
I guess so. I've only found 12. Maybe there's more. I don't know. But so far, I've only found 12.
Okay. Um let's see here.
Oh, you want me to send it to you?
No, no, it's okay. Um
It's busy in the background. What's going on? Having a party?
oh, no, my kids are home from school cuz it's a holiday here. I think
Hmm.
in the I think in the books they claim there are 16,
I've
9.
only found in this game. I've only
Okay,
found in
one,
the
two,
submod. I've
three,
only found a
four,
few.
five, 6, 7. Yeah, six. I think in the books, Maggie the Frog claims 16. But that's the thing is like she could be full of shit. So it doesn't.
I sent it to you on I sent you like an example on Facebook. I forgot who. Oh, wow, because because he made the 8 or he made whatever it is, the 9 whatever.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying
yeah.
to find all of the here. I'll send you this one here if you want to put that up. So
Oh
these are
yeah.
all of his, so these are all of his bastards. If you want to put up that last one. Um, so he has Gendry the bull has his house becomes Bullheart, and it's like a bull
I see
dancing
it.
with the stag. Like this is fucking sick. And you have Stonebell, Bella Stonebell, and then you have Stonehild, which is my stone. Warfield, I forgot who
Right.
Warfield
Bella,
is.
Bella is the one from Stony Sept, right? The
Mm.
sex worker from Stony Sept, who almost sleeps with Gendry. Um, and then yeah, who's this one on the? This is Maya Stone, and then the last one is Warfield. Is that get?
Warfield. It's some guy from the Reach, one of his bastards from the Reach, but it's super cool. I just love just yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. So did you find the twins? There's some twins in the Westerlands or something.
I've tried to find all of them. So far I found 12 and I have like the codes for it to like I can
Hmm.
input the code just in case I get lazy. But I just really love like the aesthetic they added to it. And I hope the Bloodline guys come back and do CK3 as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm going to wait for that.
No, I mean, it's just an impressive amount of work and detail. I mean, it shows the guys are super fans. Um, those text games are called MUDs. They're still a thing today. Yeah. It's funny the old text games. I don't know if you remember them back in the day, Carmine. You might be too young.
Is that the one where it's like go left,
Hmm.
climb a tree or something?
Yeah. Look. Yeah. They're all made in program basic and stuff. What do you think Bran becoming king, but only by proxy, warging another monarch from the cave as long as he lives, himself a puppet of the children, power resides where men believes it resides? Um, it's possible. So George R. R. Martin has a time travel story called Under Siege, and in the end, the time traveling character blends his consciousness with another person in the past, and they kind of exist as like a blended person from then on, together, and that's the sort of like happy ending to it all. So it could be that like Brand blends himself with someone else, and it's like a happy, you know. The idea is that like the two characters welcomed it. They were like, "Oh, this is like happy marriage, happy friendship, And so, you know, could Bran like warg into another person, and then the problem, rather than it being like in the Hodor situation, where in the Hodor situation he takes Hodor's consciousness and puts it aside, versus like blending with it, which is what he does more with like Summer, right? Summer, the two personalities kind of blending. George is a little inconsistent on that, right? Pushing Hodor aside versus blending with Summer. Like why doesn't why doesn't Bran like blend with Hodor, and then when he like leaves he starts like becoming more like Hodor, like he starts saying Hodor at various times. Like, George, it's just not consistent. Um, uh, Someone has boned with your stream playing in the background. Thoughts? Um, oh,
What?
someone has had sex
Why?
with my stream playing in the background. Thoughts? Reasonable gun policy. I guess that's happened. Um, Reasonable gun policy that doesn't auto felony armed angry people, fill the for-profit prisons, and the uh, burden the 50. All these things are true. I mean, I think that a reasonable gun policy, and like I say, I make jokes about like painting them all pink to make them not cool and things like this, and have them with uh like uh glitter and stuff like that. Like, okay, if somebody was like, Preston, look, re- we can, let's not ban guns completely, because I'd be for banning guns completely, but let's not ban guns completely. What's a reasonable gun policy? I'd be like, a reasonable gun policy is that you have maybe we'll allow like single bullet load rifles, like maybe, for hunting. Like, I'll let your hunters like have single bullet rifles, or like that kind of stuff. Maybe something that a farmer might need. That's maybe he's got, I've got some like wild boars or something, like dealing with my my cattle. I need to have a rifle at some sort. But that's about it. Like, we don't need handguns. We certainly don't need semi-automatics. You are right that it does burden the police. It makes the police a difficult job. It forces the police into becoming militarized, which causes more problems. And the weird thing is how often people use these excuses, like, oh well, if you have an armed society, you have a polite society, and that almost admits that people will just kill you if they're angry, right? Like, right? Isn't this whole like, we'll have a polite society, like, oh well, you shouldn't go around saying "f you" to people because who knows who has a gun? So you're admitting that people are going to pull out their guns angrily and just start like shooting when they're angry.
Has this well, I don't know who you're talking about, or
Yeah.
what's but like in America, like the last couple of weeks, people have just been shooting each other like left and right.
Oh
The
yeah.
guy in Missouri, the old man in Missouri who should be locked away for the rest of his fucking life and tortured, if you ask me. A little black kid came up to his house by mistake. He shot him in the head, and then
Hmm.
as the kid was on the ground, went up to him and shot him again. Like, the fuck is the matter with you?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Or the guy, or the people who came up to this one guy's driveway by mistake to deliver Instacart groceries, and he shot at them. Like,
Oh yeah.
okay.
This week it was, yeah. I mean, what, last week it was, woman was shoplifting, so the guy came over and shot her and was like, "Oh, I had to shoot her because I was scared she had a gun." And then I think this a few days ago, some people asked a guy to keep it down because he was shooting in the middle of the night and waking up their kids, and so he killed them all. Yeah, that's America. It's America.
Well, you're never gonna get rid of gun. People are gonna want to have at least handguns to like defend
I mean,
themselves
I,
in their
I, I don't
house.
I don't believe these things. Like, you're never going to get rid of guns. Like, I just don't believe it. Like, there are countries like Australia did it. Like, like, it's not hard. It's not difficult. Like, you just stop producing them, and then the old ones will eventually like fall apart. You stop producing the ammo, and the other ammo like eventually, like, the black powder eventually goes, gets waterlogged and goes stale. Like, and people are like, oh, but you can create new bullets, or like, you can create these in pristine conditions. Yeah, no, people aren't going to do that. Like, or if they do, it's going to be a rare case. Like, people are lazy. And you'd much reduce like the amount of weapons on the street and things like that, and the amount of deaths, if you just like got rid of this shit. It's just it's just, I mean, my God, like, honestly, when you say like, what's the number one fucking problem with America and Americans? Like, if you just like honestly,
Republicans.
right? But you say like life in America. What's the worst part of life in America? You know, what's the worst part?
Living with conservatives who are retarded.
But isn't it? I mean, but isn't it like the gun violence?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's part of it. Like that's a that branches into that. Yes.
I mean, isn't it like I can't walk around the city at night? Like isn't that isn't that the number one problem with America? Like, and yet like everybody's solution is somehow like more. Like, hey, why don't we try less? Why do we try less? Um, it's just so. I mean, one can make the argument that maybe the problem is like drugs. Drugs is a big problem in America, but those are so linked with guns. It's like they're all linked. Like those drug cartels like wouldn't have weapons if the United States is like gun producers didn't produce them like and export them to them. Like we it's like we create all these problems. So I it's just so clear to me. Like and everything all the right wing talking points are just so empty and ridiculous. But why is Kristen's role in the Dance of the Dragons always changing? It's true. I think that George was trying to make I think George had come up with the Dance of the Dragons as a simple thing that he wanted for the Dornish story as an example for the Ariana chapters, and then later on he was like, hey, maybe I can just maybe I can create something that might be a spin-off show, or something. It was in the fanfic, will you cover the Raven's Teeth? Yes, I just released the Bran outline yesterday, and I said, if people want to get into Bloodraven's backstory and the Raven's Teeth, like that to go for it. Like, I don't have very many ideas about them, so I kind of left it open to other people on what they could be. I mean, other than like Cold Hands is probably one of the Raven's Teeth or something. Like, that's about it. Like, I don't have any like idea of who they could be or their impact and things like that. So I think it'd be some interesting stuff. So I left it open. Some other people have some good ideas, but yeah. Littlefinger hired Jaqen to kill Ned on his way to the Wall. Since Ned was pardoned, Peter is the first to mention Faceless Men. That's it's an interesting idea. It does fit because we kind of get the idea that Varys set up the Yoren transport to go to the Wall, and that he was probably going to like steal Ned from that transport. And there's various like ideas of like why like Yoren is working for Varys, but one of them is that like before Yoren even tells Ned about Tyrion being arrested by Catelyn, Varys knows and has already found out. And so the idea is that Yoren would have had to have told Varys first. And then he says like, oh, you in A Clash of Kings, he says, don't worry about who like told me to stay and take Ned north. And it's like, and the fact that he's getting the bastard and things like that. It's just, it's Varys is set up the Yoren situation. And so the idea that Littlefinger tries to throw a wrench in Varys' plan by having Ned assassinated would be interesting. A very expensive kind of thing, though. I think there might be cheaper ways to try to kill Ned than a Faceless Man, but because it does seem that like Littlefinger was in on having Ned beheaded, so he wouldn't need the Faceless Man because Ned was already beheaded, and Littlefinger was pretty much part of that. Yeah, that'd be my guess on that one. That I can't really because he's already killing Ned. He's killing Ned before he's aboard. He already screws up Varys' plans by having Ned executed. Hmm. Ah well. Oh, did you read the? Did you get around to reading Carmine the fanfic draft?
Yeah. By the way, I was so confused at first when I saw the am I
Yeah,
allowed to say it?
don't spoil it too much. But you said because I wanted to know like that you were you but you, it was a little jarring and confusing at first. Yeah.
I'm dumb because I already messaged it to you. Like when I saw that, I immediately thought like military language, like
Mm, mm.
alpha and gamma and blah blah blah.
Oh, okay,
But I'm
okay.
like this doesn't show like what like this word doesn't show up in Ice and Fire, and then I'm like, oh, I'm dumb because
Yeah, okay. So the chapter's called the Bravo. I guess that's not a spoiler, but the chapter's called the Bravo, and Carmine's a little was confused. He was like the Bravo, what like Alpha Bravo, Charlie Delta
right because
Echo.
like at first I thought like what the fuck, but then I realized wait, I'm dumb. Bravos, of course, like that's an act. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, but other than that, like it was. I thought the ending you'd find shocking, but yes, but
I don't want to go. When are you releasing it?
not for a while. We still got that's just a draft, and so like we
That's
still
a
there's
It seems done to me.
yeah there's yeah still a little more wordsmithing, and then I have to record it, so
Let me
but
know if you don't want to record it, because I got that guy
yeah,
who
yeah.
can do the George voice.
Mm, 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 mm. All right, all right. Well, I'll talk to you offline about it. So, but
Ah!
I thought I was just like at the end did did you get it? Was there any confusion like when you saw what happened at the end, were you confused or did you like understand?
I kind of got it. It's just I'll be very honest with you. I was expecting like when are you bringing in Euron and the Greyjoys? Like when is that coming down?
Like the next chapter practically. Like the next one we're going to like do air on too like after, you know.
After Bran?
Yeah.
Because
Here,
I was
I'm
under the
sending you
impression.
this.
Let me see. Because I was under the impression that like you were gonna bring in like the moment we get Sam, like it's gonna be hell, like the Greyjoys.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I was under the impression it was something else. Never mind. Never mind. I
Oh, so
want
you
like
didn't get that.
no,
Okay.
not that one. I was under the impression it was something else. But okay. But no, I was expecting like the
Okay, okay.
Greyjoys to come in like full force on that Sam
No,
chapter.
no, 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 no. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Anyway,
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry. I'm sorry to everybody. Everybody must be really confused. But I like sent something to him. I was like, "Did you get this thing at the end?" And he's like, "No, no, I didn't." Oh, I was like, "Oh man, that's too bad." Okay, okay. Um, all right. We're the Lannister red wines with Dreamfire Rhaena's wedding to Farman. The original Hightowers trying to steal dragons, hatching Jean's Western Alliance. Oh, interesting. Um, I hadn't even thought of that. Because like I'm trying to think like when the red wines really become. Yeah, Hightower. If the idea is that the red wines are already linked with the Hightowers, I have to go back and think about like what we talked about. Because I know that Carmine and I covered this period, and I might have mentioned something about the Hightowers maybe trying to get a dragon at this point. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, this is in Fire and Blood. There's kind of an understated rivalry or Cold War going on between Jaehaerys and Dreamfire Rhaena. Dreamfire Rhaena goes off to the Westerlands and kind of like is called the Queen in the West. And she seems to be trying to get support, but she never really gets enough support to challenge the throne. And at some point, she's like trying to marry different people and align with different people. So the idea is that like the Lannisters and the Red Wines may have been like on Rhaena's side and deciding if they were going to go to war against Jaehaerys, but then it never happened. And could they have been trying to get like dragons at that point? Certainly possible. I have to like go back and like really think it through though. Okay. Say you're invited to debate one of your theories with a YouTuber that promotes the opposite view. Quentin Earl is alive. The debate in good faith and moderated by a third person. Would you say yes? Sure, I guess so.
What is this, Vosh and Destiny? Like,
I know,
like...
right?
I feel like this is like a YouTuber on their alt account trying to trying to get you.
Yeah, I mean it's no, I think that would be fun. But it's kind of a funny thing to think like we're on like a panel,
But like, is a theory even worth debating? Like,
well, it's the thing. Like, it's something that George like clearly didn't decide one way or the other. So there's evidence both ways, right? So because he's just keeping his options open. But yeah, no, I'm usually up for fun stuff like that. It'd be interesting. Is there a more obvious reference being made with House Hunter that I'm missing, or is it most likely a Robert Hunter joke? What were there references with House Hunter? Trying to think. I mean, there's a lot of there's a songwriter named Robert Hunter that George R. R. Martin's probably was into, but the problem is with Hunter is that Hunter means so many things. Like it's a little different than like Bob Weir and the Weirwood, and the Werewood, because there's only one. Not that many Weirs. But like with Hunter, like could they actually mean like a hunter hunting things, and they just picked something pretty boring that sounds like it would be an ice and fire house for the or is it an actual reference to somebody? I'm trying to think. What was the name? George R. R. Martin co-wrote a book called Hunter's Run. But it could be any reference. It's Hunter. Do you still believe that Tough Voyaging is about the Republic after George R. R. Martin downplayed it? Do you see a new AI ruling class becoming modern philosopher rulers? After George R. R. Martin downplayed it, it's more, I think it's perhaps just something that was written about in general in fantasy writing. So, C.S. Lewis was specifically very into Plato's Republic. And so it may have been something that just kind of like, because C.S. Lewis and other fantasy writers were already writing about these sorts of things in their writing, that it kind of like seeped in that way. Like if you were talking about, like say you were writing something about like a conspiracy of people like the Maesters or whatever, and your story had a bunch of conspiracies of Maesters because you just finished reading Wheel of Time and you're thinking about the Aes Sedai. Well, the Aes Sedai is kind of based on the Bene Gesserit, but like say you've never read Dune, are you influenced by Dune by like copying the Bene Gesserit or copying the Aes Sedai when the Aes Sedai have already been based on the Bene Gesserit, that kind of stuff. So like, so George R. R. Martin, he said he read Plato's Republic, and there's a lot of things in the story where I'm like, oh, but that's so clear. Like Davos in the cave and the cave allegory and stuff like that, or like people having purple eyes and it being beautiful because people have purple eyes. That's from Plato's Republic, and all sorts of other weird stuff like that. The philosopher king, like being the best ruler in the end, and like going through the failures of the different government types to get to that point, which is Plato's Republic. Like, is Ice and Fire doing that? Like going through the failed government types and having the different kings represent government types and philosophies. I thought that, and I thought George had thought it out, and then George kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it might just be that he's mimicking other fantasy work that was more focused on Plato's Republic. Because because it's weird, because like I definitely like met people that like also like after I mentioned the parallels, they're like, oh, it's just like so obvious. Of course, George R. Martin like is basing this off of Plato's Republic, and then for him to be like, yeah, no, it's like he seemed believable when he said like, I read it a long time ago, So I think it's maybe just based on other writing and other themes that just commonly come out in fantasy writing. I think in the end, I'll take him at his word and say that he doesn't remember Plato's Republic, and that he's just kind of getting it from C.S. Lewis and like C.S. Lewis's like influence on stuff. When does Varys let Tyrion go to Tywin's chambers? I think Varys wanted Tyrion to go to Tywin's chambers. I think that was totally his plan. I think it says someone put a chest right in front of a crossbow. I have to get to the actual quote. Let's see if I can find it quick enough. I've got some frozen shit on my computer. Never mind. I have to go back to that. To that scene, but crap. I'm gonna force quit some shit because I just had some stuff freezing up. Force quit. Get out of that. Oof, that was a close one. Close one, guys. Close one. Fucking Search of Ice and Fire. You've destroyed yourself. Oh my god, it's just so horrible now. Just does not work. Okay, let's see here. Let's see if I can find where Varys like talks to Tyrion here at the end. Yeah, so he says okay, so Varys is taking them on why this is Varys' fault and like why Varys really did this. So Varys, there's a maze of places underneath the Maegor's Holdfast. So Varys can conceivably take him several different routes, but the route he decides to take is the one that goes directly underneath the Tower of the Hand. And so Tyrion then says, like, he recognizes where they are, and he says, we're below the Tower of the Hand. And Varys says, yes, but, this will take us out to the river. And then Tyrion says, this will take me up to my bedchamber. And he says, like, yeah, but, like, don't go that way. And then he's like, how far is it? He's like, oh, no more than 60 feet. Keep one hand on the wall as you go. You'll feel for the door. The bedchamber is the third. But this is folly. Like, he gives him, like, it's hilarious because he gives him, like, very, very specific directions on how to get there. And then he goes in and he finds, like, a trunk right in front of where a crossbow is so that Tyrion can, like, go up and get it. Like, it's I would say it's pretty. I would, in my mind, it's almost certain that Varys wanted uh, Tyrion to kill his father, but reading it because he's just like, oh, you shouldn't go. I'm going to tell you exactly how to go. Like, I mean, it's almost hilarious, like the meter of it too. No more than 60 feet. Keep one hand on the wall as you go. You'll feel the doors. The bedchamber is the third. He sighed. This is folly, my lord. Your brother has given you your life back. Why would you cast it away and mine with it? Like, why'd you give him specific? You could easily say, like, you'll never figure out the door. Don't worry about it. Like, no, I'm going to tell you specifically how to do it. Will Shireen die in the fanfic? I don't think I've decided how she'll die in the fanfic or if she will. I think it's up in the air right now. So, um, you know, I kind of don't like. I kind of just think logistically, it's very difficult for Shireen for Stannis to burn her, like in the book and like how George R. R. Martin said it would happen. But so I don't know. I don't know. Otto has Aegon. Um, has Aegon and Helena marry for future Dragon Lord children against Rhaenyra's. Not sure when Viserys dies. Not sure when the Dance of the Dragons will happen. Yeah, I suppose if I mean that's a good point that if your plan is an actual war, a bloody war where people are going to die, versus like just trying to have the line die out. Like you can have the line die out, but if you can't, but like if you can't, I guess you're going to have these guys kill each other. What's the best way to have them kill each other? So we're going to create two lines so that they could kill each other. We can't have our line die out as theirs keeps going. Yeah, that could work. That could work. I accept that. Yeah. Um. Um. Mm-mm-mm. Littlefinger first mentions the cost of faceless men for killing a merchant. Wanted to assassinate or hint a threat to Varys Illyrio. Um. You're bringing up something that is getting on the fanfic, hitting in the fanfic there, but um, on a but was the merchant that he wanted killed Illyrio? Uh, I can't see any reason why he would want Illyrio dead. Um, like I'm just trying to think like Littlefinger's plan if he wants like Littlefinger seems to want war and chaos. Doesn't Illyrio create more war and chaos? Like what would be the point of taking out Illyrio and like snuffing out the Daenerys cause like from the beginning? Um, I don't I just can't think. I mean, maybe it was a threat to Varys. I think that's more likely than that it's actually just like a threat. Like that he's trying to get a rise out of Varys um in that situation. Um but it's also he could just be like saying stuff because he in the end he wants them not to use faceless men, so he diverts them away from it by saying, "Oh, they're too expensive." This is a dude who like helped plan like elaborate um, uh, tourneys constantly, and he thinks like hiring a faceless man is too expensive. I mean, if I were to take that quote where Littlefinger brings up the faceless man, it's when they're thinking about killing Dany, and he says that like, and it diverts them away from using them to instead use the wine cellar, which goes so well, So, um, but that would be my guess on that. Um, Who should play the Laughing Knight? Um, will we ever have the Laughing Knight? There. I mean, are we talking about like the Knight of the Laughing Tree or the Smiling Knight? But I'm trying to think. I don't know if we're ever going to have either of them like
I
appear.
don't know because, well, we when we first were discussing which prequel HBO was going to do, Dance of Dragons was at the very top, of course, because of all the dragons. And then we were contemplating, like, if they're going to do another prequel or another spinoff, where would it take place? Blackfire Rebellion got a lot of
Yeah.
stuff because a lot of stuff happens there. I thought Robert's Rebellion and Hedge Knight, of course, people thought, and they did Hedge Knight. So if they're going to do another spinoff, it's probably going to either be Robert's Rebellion.
Maybe they mean Laughing Storm. Laughing Storm is the Baratheon dude. Instead of
There's a lot of
Laughing
laughing
Knight.
people.
I know, right? I was like, what do you mean, Smiling Knight, Laughing Storm, or Knight of the Laughing Tree? Um,
I thought
but
of the
yeah,
Smiling Knight immediately.
yeah. I don't know if we're ever gonna see them. We're definitely gonna see the Laughing Storm though. So probably just get a jolly fat like Baratheon character.
Does every Baratheon have to be like a jolly fat guy? Can we just get like, can we get like the Henry Cavill of fucking like, you know, like the Henry Cavill in Man of Steel of Baratheons one time, one time.
Huh. Um, Robert Hunter also wrote and performed the soundtrack to the Armageddon Rag film that never made it past production. Oh, interesting. The I mean, it's true. I mean, it's just that Hunter is such a common name. Um, so it's like if somebody's named Jacob, do I think they're named after me? If, I'm not sure. House Reed lives in a reed house. They float. They all float down here. So there's this idea that there's a novel that was eventually made into anime called Howl's Moving Castle. And so this idea that, I mean, maybe it's a coincidence, but the idea is that Howland Reed is based on the moving castle of is based on Howl's Moving Castle. I mean, obviously Greywater Watch is named after the men of Greywater Station, but like, I don't know. Did you see the anime to this, Carmine? You're my anime go-to guy.
Actually, no, I didn't. I think this is Miyazaki. My
It
roommate
is.
is a huge fan of Howl's Moving Castle. I've never had a chance to see it. I heard good things though.
Yeah, I mean, so the book is just this like fantasy book from 1986, I think. Author is Diane Wine Jones, and so 18-year-old Sophie Hatter, eldest of three sisters living in Market Chipping Town. There are a lot of fairy tale tropes, accepting this way of life. Sophie learns that Howl, a self-absorbed and fickle but ultimately good-natured person, spreads malicious rumors about himself to avoid work and responsibility. That kind of sounds like Howland. The doors of his castle are actually opened into four places. And Howl's apprentice runs most of the day-to-day affairs. And he has ever-changing paramours. They capture Howl's heart. His heart is calcified, and oh well. I don't know. Eventually, I have to read it or see it. Not sure, but yeah, there's this idea that they live on these like floating reed islands, which I've seen. Like like there are these people in the middle of Lake Titicaca that live on these reed islands. you know, and so this idea that maybe you could like have an entire floating civilization like that, but this is them. So there's these like, you know, and I've been to these reed islands. They they just kind of throw a bunch of reeds together, and then they form this massive floating island, and then they live on these, and then eventually the reeds rot, and they have to like abandon the island and build a new one. But you know, things like that exist. It would suck in a bog though, because you don't have these big open lakes. So I don't know. But yeah, I don't know how his castle moves. You'd think that it wouldn't. I mean, I guess it's just a series of little houses. Because if it's a bog, do you have these big lakes? I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. And then finally, finish the damn books, Preston. I spent way too much time. I wish I spent way too much time on that fanfic. American Pie is like 40 years old. I guess the Don McLean version. Yeah, not the movie. Um, um, Wait, what was it? Mind blown. It had me stop cutting carrots. I have attention. Which one? Which things?
Oh, by the way, just because you mentioned anime, are we gonna watch the Star Wars Visions anime season 2? Remember that one from last time?
Yeah. I'll probably watch it again.
Sweet, sweet, sweet.
The last one, I mean, at least half of them were interesting last time. I liked them. Half of them.
Yeah, I. You know what? The last Star Wars Visions. Looking back on it now, Mike and Rich from Red Letter Media was so correct. Star Wars is so creatively bankrupt because all those fucking short stories had to do with the Jedi and the Sith, and after a while, it got fucking boring because that's all it was.
Yeah.
It's so creatively bankrupt.
I mean, I disagree with like Andor. I mean, in truth, all you need is like a good writer, and you can produce something great. You know?
I still can't get over these assholes who didn't like Andor. Like, bro, what do you want then? Like, it's either Andor or you get Book of Boba. Like, what the fuck do you want? To be fair, Mando season 2, which I liked, it was very fan servicey, but Andor is really the next evolution where Star Wars should go. Everyone making Star Wars shows right now should take notes from Andor.
It's just what, but whereas the money, you know, Mandalorian's got that gets you your action figures and your Baby Yoda shirts. I mean, you know, somebody bought a Baby Yoda shirt for my kid, so he's got a Baby Yoda shirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just where things are right now. I mean, you've been to the toy section of Target?
I have not, but I will take your word for it. And but season 3 was so trash, trash.
Yeah, I know.
Fuck,
I know.
man.
Greywater watches a defunct futuristic naval ship. This is so I don't know if George was aware of this, but like, so Greywater in the military, and in sewage treatment, means like your waste, your like waste disposal. That's your Greywater. And so like it's so I don't know if he was aware of that when he made Greywater Watch, right? Like, I think, unless I'm confusing with Blackwater, because Blackwater is also bad, like bad water. Yeah, no, it's Greywater sewage is wastewater, right? It's the wastewater from the sinks, washing machines, bathtubs, and showers. Containing lower levels of contamination. So at the sewage treatment plants, they get black water and they get gray water, and they treat them differently. Which, though, I mean, I pee in the shower. How are they dealing with that? You'd think it would have just all go to the same place, you know. But yeah, the so it's weird, you know, to continue it on, like actually have a place called Greywater Station and your Greywater Watch. Like, ugh, ugh. I feel like Preston Jacobs could easily beat up Howland Reed. Couldn't everybody? Yeah, bog devils, more like poop devils. Um, yeah, implies the existence of a body of water called Greywater, not on maps. I mean, you know, if their ship moves around, if their castle moves around, maybe there is a small lake. But it's like, I don't know, like the idea that ravens don't go there. I mean, I think I like this idea that they're just making up excuses. Like, you know, the castle moves, the ravens can't make it there. Then why were you sending ravens to them and like for books and books? This is ridiculous. Um, like how would you even think that there's ravens? Like it doesn't even make any sense. Like they sent letters to them, which means that like the maesters would have had ravens at Greywater Watch, and then they would have like had them trained and then brought to Winterfell so that they could return. But then the castles moved. So there was a maester there, and the maester would have known that the castle moved, and then when the castle was moving, he'd be like, "None of my ravens are gonna come back, you assholes! Like, how am I supposed to do my job? I'm a maester." Like, oh gosh. Oh well. So what else is going on with you, man, Carmine?
Besides this fucking cold that is persisting, it's not really
Yeah.
persisting. It's just a bullshit cough. Do you have a cough too? Does anybody you know have a cough? I feel like everybody.
My wife has had one that's lingered. Pee is sterile when it comes out. It immediately starts festering, like right after. It's only
fuck are these,
sterile.
like-
Yeah, it's only sterile when it first comes out. Because people are like,
Extreme,
"Oh, if you're
dude.
should you drink your pee?" Like, you know, and you're like, "No, you should never drink your pee." But yeah,
What is happening in the stream? What is going on?
I know.
Oh, by the way, your boy Tucker got fired. What the fuck, man? What's going on?
I don't know.
And now Biden's dunking on him. Did you see the correspondence dinner?
I'll say this: like Biden, he still has some pretty good comic timing, you know, for being an old man, right? I'm not saying he wrote those. He obviously he didn't write those jokes, but he still had to like deliver those jokes, and he's pretty good. He's pretty good at delivering.
It's fine.
Yeah, you know,
Ripping on Fox though is fucking hilarious.
yeah, he was pretty funny. But I think something like people all around the world are talking about these lingering coughs, and it's like not even COVID. It's like other similar things.
Fuck, bro. Whatever. It's just drinking water, staying hydrated with these fucking Ricola cough drops, which are delicious. That's what I'm doing.
That's the question. Are there maesters in the neck? I mean, they I guess there would have to be. Like Rob fully thinks, like Rob sends orders to Howland Reed and fully thinks that the Cranag men are going to meet him on the King's Road. How on earth would he know that? I mean, does he send a rider in the night and he's like, 2 weeks, dude, I'll see you later. Like, he's got to, there's no way, unless he sent a rider thinking that like a 2 week trip would do it. But he must have had ravens and they must have had maesters, so, oh, well.
Well, if the Iron Islands has maesters, the neck has to have maesters. It just has to.
Yeah, the Iron Islands have maesters, so I mean, you think it's a pretty important. It's like the top 8 houses. You think that the Citadel would put it there. Jackie's kid has had a small cough, and they keep saying it's allergies. It might be, that does explain stuff as well. The fact that it's like global, so. I can't wait for the Tucker Carlson podcast. These guys, they tend to live on. So what they found about right-wing media, maybe media in general, I don't know, is that the audience is out there for the shit, it doesn't matter who's saying it. Somebody's going to say it. It's just who's going to who's going to take the bank on it, right? They had all these like preachers before Rush Limbaugh, and then Rush Limbaugh, and then Glenn Beck, and whatever. The audience is out there. It's so like Tucker was it. Tucker like essentially took advantage of the fact that O'Reilly had been fired and got a spot, and then but they'll throw somebody else in there. Jesse Waters will be thrown in there, and he'll do the exact same thing, and we'll I think Tucker made his money. He can die a rich man, fucking asshole. But what are you gonna do?
For a minute there,
has Preston seen Carmine's face? Of course, yes, I have.
Yes.
I have. The rest of you don't get to.
That's right. For a minute there, I thought you meant Jesse Lee Peterson, the guy that goes,
Oh
amazing.
No.
I love him.
Jesse Waters is like that. He's the ugly Ted Mosby character that's on.
Wow.
He's like an ugly Ted Mosby.
I don't see the Ted Mosby thing at all. Really?
You don't see it with like the hair and everything.
I just think you think all white guys look alike. I don't know. I don't see it. I just don't see it.
Totally it. There's like, I'm hoping that like, I'll because all the white guys look the same. Like I can probably sneak in as Ryan Condal and like.
Do you look like Ryan Condal? No, let me see. No, you do not.
I mean,
No, you don't.
I guarantee that to like a non-American white person, they would just be like, "No, yeah, no, you look the same." Like if it was a bunch of Taiwanese people looking at a picture of Ryan Condal and me, they'd be like, "Oh, you're like brothers." I guarantee, like, totally. By the way, it's funny. So my kid, is a halfie, and there's two other halfies at his school, and
Fucking term.
oh yeah, well it's just a term people use,
That term is just so fucking random. I'm sorry, continue.
Right. Well, what's nice about keeping it ambiguous is like a lot of times it's like you're not sure which half you're talking about, because sometimes people are like, oh, he's like, half Asian or he's half white, But if you say halfy, you're like, you're not sure which half, like half. I mean, it's half of two things, obviously, but like he looks nothing like these other two halfies, like nothing. They're significantly different looking kids, but they send the other kids shit home with my kid a lot, and they send our shit home with the other kids like a lot. And like when I'm getting like when I'm picking it my son up, like the parents will be like, oh, like bye, and then they'll use the name of one of the other kids, and then like their own kid is like, that's not Marcus, that's Sky. Like, oh, sorry. You're like, yeah, well.
Have you ever gotten that before? Like someone like non-white saying like all you white people look alike. Have you ever gotten that? Because I've gotten that before.
I've got it as jokes.
I got it like there's this
and I've had Asian people tell me that like I look like a white person that I totally do not look like. Like I got that one time. I was at a Chinese restaurant, a little Chinese restaurant in Newark, New Jersey, and this Asian man who's cleaning the restaurant while I'm waiting for my food. He goes, "Hey, are you this? Or like, are you this? Like," I'm like, "No, I'm not." He goes, "Oh, you all look alike to me." I'm like, "Okay, thanks." Well, they're also not scared. Yeah, they're not scared of coming off as racist. All the time.
It's fine by me.
Before I get back to killing off tier 1 characters, I'm a halfie too, and only Asian people call me halfie. It does seem to be like maybe an Asian term, like because I think white people tend to say like, oh, he's half Asian, but like I think among Asians, especially like Asian Americans, they'll use the term halfie.
I've never heard that term until you used it today
Hmm.
just now.
Well, my wife throws it around, and she's got so. Um, does killing off a tier one character scare you? It is very daunting to do something like that, like, and I think in the show they were so scared of killing off tier one characters that they didn't do it until the very end of the show. Or it was like a major event when they did it. Like, we're gonna end the season by killing off Mace Tyrell. Oh no! Like only have dedicated an entire episode to killing off, like, oh my gosh, we're gonna end this episode with killing off Olena Tyrell. Like, you're like, oh god, like, even B characters got like star treatment, and then it wasn't until the very end where you're like, oh gosh, okay, we can finally kill Cersei and Jaime and Jorah and Theon, like, with only a few episodes to go. um but let's see here. But yeah, I think I'm gonna try not, at least with the fanfic, I'm gonna try not to be so. But that's not gonna come for a long time. Ooh, gosh. Somebody just said I look like a porn star. I didn't know who that.
By the way, real quick, shout out to Mr. Link who sent this to me on my Discord. 1 second, because you said that guy looks like a dopey Ted Mosby.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hold on, this is the picture he sent me. Is this what you're talking about? He doesn't look. I sent you on Facebook. He doesn't look like it to me.
Well, yeah. I think a more ugly, sinister Ted Mosby. Yeah.
Jesus
Yeah. Yeah.
Christ!
Yeah. No, definitely. Um. Here we
I don't
go.
see it. I don't see
Yeah.
it. Nah, I don't see it.
It is. It
Wait,
is. Now that I have these pictures, like, I definitely see that it's like his smile is a very similar smile. Like, he has this like weird like smirk thing, and then I can see it in the nose and the hair. But yeah.
You know what I'm afraid of in regards to Tucker getting fired? I'm afraid, like, because before Tucker, it was who's that man, the crazy guy? We'll do it live. Fuck it. Who's that guy? That's wow, his name escapes me. Bill O'Reilly. Before it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Tucker, it was O'Reilly. O'Reilly wasn't that bad. It, like, when you think about it, and then you go from O'Reilly to Tucker, who's like awful, and we can only go downhill from here. Maybe.
I mean, it's funny. It's funny how, like, when things get bad, and then you start looking back at the things that you thought were horrific, and you realize like how far we've descended. Like the fact that like George W. Bush like looks good compared to like where republicanism is right now. Like, he looks so
so.
like reasonable. And you're like, no, he was horrible. And then you're like, but we've gotten so horrible that it's like, oh, this person wants to murder me. Oh, and this person wants to like keep me alive, like, and like rape me every day for like 50 years. Like, like, oh gosh, I guess that's worse. Like, like, it's all of a sudden I want to be killed. Like, oh, that person that just wanted to murder me seemed like an okay person. It's like the Joffrey to Ramsay like connect like progression, right? Like, Joffrey doesn't seem that bad when you got Ramsay.
I gotta show you something real quick. 1 second. I'm getting the picture right now. This is something that's been on my mind for the longest time. And 15 years ago, there was an episode of Family Guy where Stewie and Brian go back in time to Nazi Germany.
Hmm.
And they make a joke about the then 2008 presidential thing, blah, 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 because Stewie is wearing a Nazi outfit, and then he sees there's a button on his, I sent it on Facebook.
Yeah.
He sees there's a button on his shirt, and it says McCain Palin. Looking back on it now, really, McCain Palin were the Nazis compared to what we have now? Really?
Oh, yeah.
You guys like thinking back 15 years ago, you motherfuckers exaggerate.
Well, I mean, I think it was like Palin was that. I mean,
Palin was an idiot, but I wouldn't call her a Nazi. I think she's too stupid to be a Nazi. Like, remember that one time she didn't have her script, and she like her off script was like terrible. I don't know if I could call someone being that dumb, someone who's that dumb naturally, a Nazi. Compared to what we have now with like Trump and DeSantis,
yeah.
I just think back on it like it wasn't as bad as you guys made it out to be. I just think about that scene specifically a lot. Like,
Well, I mean, it's about people trying to appeal to what they think the masses will want, and then just keeping going to an extreme to see, like, is society degrading? And I would say yes, society is degrading, but like, it they're all just trying to like do that dance. Like we see all these, like Tucker Carlson. Oh, like Tucker Carlson. So when he got fired from Crossfire on CNN, and his job was to be the somewhat, like, he was a slight to right, like, guy who was debating on CNN. After that, he got a bunch of different gigs that didn't last very long, and on one of them, he got a job on NPR for a while, and he had an NPR show where he would like have on a bunch of liberals and like talk about, like, in a sort of like moderate, even liberal leaning, like, setting, like policy. Like, he had this show for a little bit, and then that didn't last, and then he got his job on Fox News, and so he's they're kind of they don't actually believe anything, which is even more dangerous. They're just playing to the worst impulses.
yeah,
Like,
they're grifters.
yeah, they're grifters that are playing to the worst impulses, which is like the sad thing. Which is what we've proved with this like court case, right? That he like hated Trump and like all these different things,
It's perfect. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Visited California as a Brit. The homeless is mad. What do you think can be done? Love the FF. Keep it up. The fan fiction. Keep it up. It's funny, for a moment there, I was like, imagine he's actually an American, but like he decided to visit California as a Brit. Like he just like, he just pretended the whole time. Homelessness, like obviously this is one of the hardest social issues that we're dealing with, because like there's not a clear answer. Like how do you create affordable housing for, like, obviously homelessness is caused, one, by affordable, like, it's a mental health issue. There are people that just can't hold down jobs and friendships and things like that and find a place to live, because most people their place to live is either determined by having friends and family or by having financial means to rent someplace. And so if you don't have financial means, it also means you don't have friends and family. And that's usually somebody in a mental health situation, but of course it's exacerbated by the fact that like there's also like not affordable housing and there's financial means. So, I mean, I think that, yeah, you need first, like, you need more programs, more public programs to treat mental health. But you also, you need places where people can get treated. And I think that's the big thing. Now, obviously, like, affordable housing is also a problem. And I think that's the harder one to fix. Like, how do you create affordable housing in the world? And I suppose, like, the answer people had before was like, ghettos and public housing. And then when that was concentrated, it was too much of a crime issue. So the solution was public housing that was dispersed amongst the city, even in rich areas, which I think is about what you need to do, what you have to do. So I think the solution, yeah, more funding for mental health situations. You've got to have more public housing, and you need to have, I think, certain regulations on speculation and people just, there's people that like artificially increase the prices of housing and bubbles and things like that. And I think there are ways through regulation to limit like bubble growths. Like housing prices are in a bubble, like they don't need to be this high. It's kind of ridiculous. But of course, there's not necessarily the political will, because a lot of like rich people like thinking they're sitting on on $1 million house, you know, even though it's not worth $1 million. But they like feeling like they have this value, and that some sort of regulation that decreases the value of their house decreases their net worth. And so it's tough to get that political will too. So it's all it's one of the hardest issues ever. And you know, I obviously can't solve it. Society, we've got great minds, PhDs, thinking this through in think tanks, and you know they can't really figure it out. So, but that's what I say.
My friend Glink is a YouTuber. This guy Glink, he actually did a video. He's the guy I told you about who talked about Taiwan's most wanted streamer, that
Mm.
American guy who went to Taiwan and he did one little thing, and the Taiwanese public just erupted and wanted this guy's head on a platter. I sent you the video about that a while ago. He recently did a video a while ago about the homeless problem in California because he lives near.
Mm.
And one of the problems really is that there are adequate spaces for a lot of these people, but you're not allowed to take drugs inside those places, and so a lot of
Mm.
homeless people opt not to go in them.
Oh, right. Okay, that's interesting.
And you're gonna hate me for saying this. You're gonna hate this, but there was a podcast that I listened to, a Rogan one. I know I'm awful, and he had on the trans community's most wanted person, Dave Chappelle, and they were talking about how a lot of the like the funding for that stuff in California doesn't go to the proper places. It goes to like a bunch of other stuff that doesn't really goes towards fixing the problem. More so, it goes to like kind of keeping it afloat. So there's jobs like there to fix the problem, even though it's not fixed. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems they have, and then they compare it to like a European country where it seems like the taxes actually go towards fixing problems versus in California where the taxes they pay don't seem like they're doing anything.
It's I feel bad. This next comment's about kind of that issue. There's so many homeless in California, even from other places, and I do feel bad for California because in a sense, if you have good weather and you have good social services, of course you're going to attract the homeless people. And so a lot of people are like, well, let's just cut off the social services. You're right, but you're just moving the problem somewhere else. In a sense, these need to be like national issues with like national funding for these things. Like it shouldn't all be the burden of California to take on other states' homeless people, you know. Um, but what are you gonna do? It's hard. Um, make home auctions public. I mean, it is kind of weird. Like, I mean, home buying is this whole other weird kind of situation. Like some home buying is public, but really like it's not really that way because you need to get a realtor to get into the right area, and you need to there are I think bank like default like when people default on their and the bank owns it, like certain groups of people get to go to the auction and things like that. There's all these complexities to it. um Available housing options, but capitalism clogs it up. I'm not even sure if it's capitalism. This is the thing, is like um when people build these systems and mechanisms that for achieving and accumulating wealth, it's not necessarily like the free market that did it. A lot of times it's like something built on top of the free market that causes the free market to like not function. So I know like capitalism tends to be this like catch-all word for like, well, the whole problem is like our capitalist system. But it's like it's I almost see it as like weird cronyistic circles on top that have been built on top of the capitalistic system that need to like be regulated and brought down so that like the purity of the capitalistic system can be maintained through I think the purity of the capitalistic system is maintained through government oversight and regulation. But I'm going to take one last question and then I got to get going. Is Barbary Dustin scared Roos will marry her to Ramsay, i.e. Hornwood, until fake Arya shows up to marry him, hence banishing to Goldgrass? Seems to be a succession crisis looming for House Dustin with a Tyrell with a Risewell by birth ruling. So a lot here. So yes, there's like with Risewells, there seems to be some sort of confusion and some sort of succession crisis. And this is kind of evidenced by the fact that like each of the Risewell men have chosen their own sigil. And this tends to happen when there's some sort of like succession dispute. So there's something going on weird with Risewell. Now, Dustin was also a Risewell originally, Lady Dustin, but she's kind of old and I don't know... and she hasn't remarried for some reason. And there would be, whoever marries her would definitely start influencing like the Dustin and Risewell succession situation and who has power. Now, could it be Ramsay? The thing is that Ramsay forced the situation with Hornwood, but no one really took it seriously until he was legitimized and had the army. He was just kind of a crazy guy going off on doing his own thing. They immediately took him out. Right? They went to Hornwood and arrested him and put him in jail. And Roos was like, I don't know what's going on with my son. That kid's crazy. So I can't really go on that timeline that Barbary Dustin would have been scared of Ramsay marrying her because it was such an outside the box crazy event that no one would have expected what he did to Hornwood. And Roos didn't take any blame. So it's so I'd say it's it's not necessarily that, but and then I think she's scared of Ramsay just in the sense that Ramsay's fucking nuts. But I don't know if she ever thought that she'd be married off to him. Though Barbara Dustin's marriage situation is worth looking into, and it's interesting because the whole North is kind of funny. But just timeline wise, like no one took Ramsay seriously until he got legitimized and had an army. In fact, I'm even thinking like even when he had Winterfell, did people take him seriously? We didn't really have eyes up there at the time, but until like Reek, right? Because the North is kind of emptied out in A Storm of Swords. Because Bran is traveling, but he's not near anything. And then Theon disappears as a point of view. So we don't even know what's going on in the North during that period. It's a little confusing until Ramsay suddenly wants to let his dad through at Deepwood Mott. Anyway, holy shit! It's Preston Jacobs. I get these random things. I'm like, what? Stannis will marry Lady Dustin to Justin Massey. That's not a bad theory, actually. Lady Dustin MILF, right? She must be in her, like, even though she seems like an old lady, she must be in her she must be in her mid-30s to late 30s. Like she's not actually that old. So it's kind of funny. Anyway, thank you so much, Carmine, for joining me. I've got to get going.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I'll talk to everybody soon. All right, thank you.